Chapter 5346. Do you have any evidence? Hong Qingyun hurriedly asked in a deep voice. Many people know about this matter. During the primeval trials, Lin Yi and his subordinates had accurately locked onto the vital points of our Snow Sword faction's various techniques. This is not a coincidence. Even if you use your toes to think, someone must have revealed our Snow Sword faction's mental cultivation method and martial techniques to them. Without a doubt, this person can only be Lung Lung, who has always been very close to Lin Yi. There is no other possibility, Xue Jianfeng said with conviction. The atmosphere in the meeting hall instantly became much more solemn. From the sect leader Hong Qingyuan to the ordinary gold core stage elders, everyone unconsciously frowned and collectively fell into silence. This is only your one-sided statement, Su Xiaodong retorted. She had never heard Lung Ling mention this matter, so she did not know the specific situation. When she suddenly heard Xue Jianfeng's words, her heart was already in a mess. She just instinctively believed that her disciple would not betray the sect. That was all. By one-sided statement? I have a real witness for what I said. Our sect's disciple Luo Shaoxing is the victim. Do you want to ask him to come over and be the witness? Xue Jianfeng's face was filled with confidence. Other than him, there was no one else who knew about this matter. Luo Shaoxing and the other Snow Sword faction disciples who had participated in the secular world's training would certainly follow his lead. Of course, this matter would be decided by what he said. You. Su Xiaodong immediately felt a little guilty. She believed that Lung Lung was innocent, but the other party had even brought out a witness. They were preparing to directly make this an ironclad case. This matter cannot be underestimated. Since there is a witness, then let's call him over and ask him face to face. This will be good for everyone, Hong Qingyuan immediately decided. All right. Xue Jianfeng approved of this move and immediately sent someone to find Luo Shaoxing. Luo Shaoxing was frightened to the point that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly when faced with the questions of these big shots. He stuttered as he recounted the situation of the primeval trials. At this moment he didn't dare to lie in the slightest. In fact, Xue Jianfeng didn't need him to deliberately lie. With him here, Luo Shaoxing only needed to report truthfully and not speak any superfluous words. After listening to Luo Shaoxing's report, Hong Qingyuan and the others looked at each other, and their expressions became more and more solemn. It was obvious that Luo Shaoxing did not lie. Otherwise, it would not have escaped their eyes at all. It was because of this that they were so solemn. From the looks of it, Lung Lung's crime of revealing the sect's heart technique was almost certain. There's nothing to say now, right? Xue Jianfeng looked at everyone proudly. At the same time, he didn't forget to take care of Su Xiaodong. Usually he wouldn't put such an inconspicuous substitute elder in his eyes, but who asked him to be Lung Lung's master? Su Xiaodong was speechless. She wanted to refute, but she didn't know how to refute. After all, they had even brought out a witness and her words carried little weight. How could she refute? Great Elder, what do you think? Hong Qingyuan looked at Qi Qianqiu. Qi Qianqiu glanced at Xue Jianfeng and said slowly, It sounds serious, but in my opinion we can't rush to a conclusion now. No matter what, we still have to confront Lung Lung face to face. What do you think, sect leader? Yes, that's what I think too. Hong Qingyuan nodded. Although the sect had 2 more experts in the Golden Core realm, no one would complain about having too many talented disciples with unlimited potential. A super genius like Lung Lung, no matter which sect she was placed in, even in the top 4 clans and sects of the entire primeval underworld, would definitely be a treasure that they could only wish for. Unless it was absolutely necessary, otherwise why would they destroy themselves? Confront? Xue Jianfeng frowned. He knew very well that once Lung Lung was called over, it would definitely be a back-and-forth wrangling. Just as he was about to think of an excuse to reject it, Su Xiaodong on the other side was the first to become restless. No way. Su Xiaodong quickly shouted. Why not? Hong Qingyuan and Qi Qianqiu looked at each other. Lung Ling is currently in closed-door training to break through to the Golden Core realm. Once she's interrupted, the consequences will be unimaginable. Su Xiaodong said anxiously. She's already breaking through to the Golden Core realm so soon? Everyone was shocked to hear this. In just a short year she had soared from the early stage of foundation building all the way to the foundation building perfected. This in itself was already a very remarkable miracle. From the perspective of any normal person, Lung Lung would have to settle down for a few years in her current position, and only start to prepare after her realm was completely stabilized. How could she break through to the Golden Core realm so soon? Where did she get such confidence and confidence? Shui Jianfeng's eyes lit up when he heard this. As a Gold Core perfected realm cultivator, he had long looked down on Lung Lung. However, since it was the critical period for Lung Lung to break through to the Golden Core realm, then there was something to be done. As everyone knew, the breakthrough of any stage in isolation was very particular about doing it in one go. It was even more so when it came to breaking through to the Golden Core realm, especially for a genius disciple like Lung Lung who had an unparalleled talent. One should know that the most important thing for a so-called genius was to have indomitable confidence and pride. Because of this confidence and pride, they could often dig out their talent to the fullest, and become an existence that ordinary disciples could only look up to. However, this was also a double-edged sword. Once they encountered a setback at an important juncture, after the confidence and pride that they had all along been dealt a blow, these so-called geniuses would most likely be unable to recover from the setback, or even vanish into the masses. There were too many such precedents in the small Jianghu in the ancient times, too many to mention. Taking 10,000 steps back, even if they could not kill the genius Lung Lung, even if they could only interrupt Lung Lung's breakthrough rhythm, causing her to be stuck at the Golden Core realm bottleneck for a few more years or decades, it would still be a pleasant surprise. So what if she's breaking through to the Golden Core realm? She can ignore the summons of the Elders Guild just because she's breaking through to the Golden Core realm. She can even ignore the crime of betraying the sect. How can there be such a good thing in the world? Shui Jianfeng immediately sneered with slanted eyes. But Su Xiaodong still wanted to argue. But my ass. If the emperor breaks the law, he will be punished the same as the common people. Lung Lung is just an ordinary disciple, but she's giving special treatment. Then does our Snow Sword sect still have any rules to speak of? Shui Jianfeng glared and said righteously. Sect leader, great elder, it's still uncertain whether Lung Lung has leaked our sect's mental cultivation method to outsiders. Now is the most critical time for her to break through to the Golden Core realm. Everyone knows that once the first attempt fails, the difficulty of the second attempt will increase exponentially. If we forcefully interrupt it at this time, it's almost like killing a super genius. For the sake of the sect, please be careful. Su Xiaodong could only plead with the two of them. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope I can continue to break through to the 515 red envelope list. On the 15th of May, the red envelope reign will be able to give back to the readers and promote the works. Being together is also love. I'll definitely do my best. Chapter 5347. Here's today's update, and at the same time, I'm pulling votes for the Qidian 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes and the votes will also be given some coins. I beg for everyone's support and appreciation. I think. Qi Qianqiu hesitated for a moment and said somewhat unbearably, why don't we postpone it? It's not too late to confront her face to face after she breaks through to the Gold Core stage. What do you think, Sect Master? In the end, before Hong Qingyuan could express his opinion, Shui Jianfeng had already taken the lead and slammed the table, saying unscrupulously, Great Elder, I think you're really too old and muddle-headed, aren't you? If someone makes a mistake, we must immediately convict them as a warning to others. This is not a child's play. This is a matter of principle, and it concerns the survival of our entire Snow Sword sect. Do you think that a matter of principle can be discounted and negotiated? Qi Qianqiu's face suddenly became extremely ugly. Even Hong Qingyun had never dared to speak to him in such a tone, let alone a mere young junior. However, although Shui Jianfeng's words were unpleasant to hear, every word was reasonable and he really couldn't refute it for a while. Everyone's eyes then focused on Hong Qingyuan again. At this time it was up to him, the sect master, to make a decision. Hong Qingyuan was very embarrassed. This problem was even more difficult for him than letting Shui Jianfeng be the executive deputy sect master just now. He knew very well that it was unrealistic for him to forcibly suppress the matter of the executive deputy sect master. After all, the other party was a Gold Core perfection expert with a promising future at such a young age. Instead of blindly suppressing him, it was better to go with the flow. At worst he could help Bing Wuqing next and let the two of them balance each other. However, regarding Lung Lung's matter, he couldn't go with the flow. that was very likely to destroy a future pillar. However, Xue Jianfeng was stubbornly clinging on to the matter, and even claimed the righteous cause. As the sect master, he couldn't ignore it. What should he do? Tap, tap, tap. Hong Qingyuan tapped the table. His expression was unfathomable. No one could tell what he was thinking. After a long time, he slowly said, "The executive vice sect leader's words are reasonable." That one sentence made Su Xiaodong feel as if he had fallen into an ice cellar. Xue Jianfeng and his father Xue Liping's lips curled up. However, before they could laugh out loud, Hong Qingyuan immediately added, "However, the matter of leaking our sect's mental cultivation method is still not conclusive after all. Cold is at most a suspect. She can't be considered guilty yet. Therefore, we still have to consider for her and postpone the face-to-face confrontation." "That's not appropriate, is it?" Xue Jianfeng's face darkened immediately. He snorted and said, "Let's not talk about the fact that this matter should be dealt with as soon as possible to warn others. At the very least, this is my first proposal as the executive vice sect leader. Is the authority of the executive vice sect leader just for show?" Qi Qianqiu and the other elders grinned at the same time. In their eyes, Xue Jianfeng's position as the executive vice sect leader was controversial. He really thought he was a big shot. However, Hong Qingyuan could only appease him. The position of the executive vice sect leader is very important. Of course, it's not just for show. We can't be too arbitrary. What if I insist? Xue Jianfeng turned hostile like flipping a book. Just now he was smiling at Hong Qingyuan, but now he was aggressive. Looking at his posture, if the other party didn't agree, he might turn hostile right away. This guy really has a dog's character. Hong Qingyuan was so angry that he cursed in his heart. Although the other party's strength as a great perfection gold core was extraordinary, it was unrealistic to say that it could scare him, the dignified sect leader. However, considering the overall situation, he couldn't turn hostile like Xue Jianfeng so easily. Hong Qingyuan didn't feel it before, but at this moment he really regretted it. Normally, when one reached the level of great perfection gold core, one must be a mature and experienced figure. In his opinion, even if Xue Jianfeng wasn't as steady and decent as Qi Qianqiu, he should at least be at the level of his father, Xue Liping. He shouldn't turn hostile right away. Who would have thought that he was such a dog? Little did he know that if Xue Jianfeng was alone, even if this guy had the strength of great perfection gold core, he might not dare to be so unscrupulous. But now he had the central and unfathomable and powerful backing, and he didn't put Hong Qingyuan and the others in his eyes at all. With his usual character, of course he would turn hostile right away. Why would he care so much? In Xue Jianfeng's eyes, with the central pulling the strings behind the scenes, the whole Snow Sword sect would fall into his control sooner or later. Hong Qingyuan and the others were just bones in the grave. If they were sensible, he could give them a nominal high-level position. If not, none of them would have a good end. The atmosphere in the conference hall suddenly became extremely tense and oppressive again. Hong Qingyuan's face was gloomy and uncertain. In the face of the aggressive Xue Jianfeng, he was forced to take a small step back. Otherwise, if they really fought face-to-face, the whole situation would be messed up. Well, since the executive deputy head insists, I'll have to trouble Elder Su to send a message to Cold. Under the premise that it won't affect her too much, let her come out for a confrontation and clarify. Hong Qingyuan said. Su Xiaodong hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded and agreed. This was a choice forced by helplessness. There was no other way. If she was asked to send a message to Cold, she would naturally be careful. At most, she would give a gentle reminder but would not forcefully interrupt. In this way, the damage to Cold would not be so great. If it were someone else, it would be a big trouble. No. Xue Jianfeng stood out directly to stop them. He snorted and said, "She is Cold's master. Who knows what she will do in this? What if she takes the opportunity to collude with Cold? Let me do it. If you want to stop me, you can try to stop me." As soon as he said that, everyone was stunned. Xue Jianfeng's unreasonable level was far beyond everyone's expectations. For a moment, no one dared to stop him. In terms of strength, the only one present who could compete with Xue Jianfeng was Hong Qingyuan. However, since Xue Jianfeng had already said so as the sect leader, how could Hong Qingyuan dare to take the risk? If they really turned hostile and started a fight, the entire Snow Sword sect would be in chaos. However, if they did not stop him, Xue Jianfeng would definitely not give up this excellent opportunity to attack Cold. A good super genius might be destroyed in his hands. If Cold was found to be innocent, it would be too late for regrets. While they were in a dilemma, a delicate figure stood in front of Xue Jianfeng without hesitation. It was Su Xiaodong. Do you want to die? Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but narrow his eyes. Although Su Xiaodong was Lung Lung's master, he was only the lowest-ranked alternate elder in terms of status. In terms of strength, he was only at the early gold core stage. What did he have to stop him? It's going to be 515 soon. I hope to continue to charge into the 515 red packet ranking. On the 15th of May, the red packet reign will reward the readers and promote the works. Every piece is love. I'll definitely do my best. Chapter 5348. Here's today's update, and at the same time, I'd like to solicit votes for the Qidian 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes, and the votes will also be given some coins. I beg for everyone's support and appreciation. Su Xiaodong did not speak. She knew that it was useless for her to say anything at this time. She could only express her determination with actions. For Lung Lung's sake, she would not give in even if she was beaten to death. Okay, I'll fulfill your wish. A brutal killing intent suddenly surged out of Xue Jianfeng's body. This scene really shocked everyone present. Even Hong Qingyuan and Qi Qianqiu's expressions changed. This guy must be crazy. Could it be that he really dared to kill people in this conference hall? Compared to the shock of everyone, Su Xiaodong bore the brunt of it at this moment. Facing the oppression of a great perfection Gold Core Realm master at close range, she who was in the early stage of the Gold Core Realm was in a precarious situation. Once the opponent made a move, it would not take a second move to kill her. However, Su Xiaodong still did not give in. Xue Jianfeng could not help but laugh. He immediately unsheathed his long sword and stabbed it straight at Su Xiaodong's throat. The sword was so fast that Su Xiaodong had no time to dodge it. Hong Qingyuan and the others were too far away. At this time, even if they wanted to help, it was unrealistic. In everyone's eyes, she was now a dead person. For a moment, everyone's eyes changed again and again when they looked at Xue Jianfeng. Previously they thought this guy was just arrogant, but now they felt a real tremor from their bones. Killing people because of a disagreement, this guy was simply a demon. At this time no one paid attention to Su Xiaodong anymore. She had been shrouded by the shadow of death. No one could save her from Xue Jianfeng's sword because Hong Qingyuan, who had this ability, had given up trying. As a result, Xue Jianfeng's sword stopped abruptly midway. Everyone was stunned at the same time. Everyone was a little incredulous. Could it be that this guy had found his conscience? But then they suddenly realized that Xue Jianfeng's face was extremely ugly at this time. It did not look like he had found his conscience and stopped voluntarily. In fact, his long sword was not stopped by him at all. It was blocked by a thin layer of ice out of thin air. Yes, it was just a thin layer of ice. At first glance, it looked like a layer of ice that could be pierced with a finger, but it actually blocked Xue Jianfeng's long sword. Who is it? Xue Jianfeng was almost roaring these 4 words. One must know that he was prepared to kill Su Xiaodong in front of everyone to establish his prestige. Therefore, he didn't hold back at all in his previous attack except for not using his trump card. However, his attack was still blocked by a thin layer of ice. How could he endure this? Me. A calm voice came from outside the door. Then a figure walked in, causing everyone's eyelids to twitch. The temperature of the entire meeting hall instantly dropped. The person was Bing Wuqing. Aren't you in seclusion? Xue Jianfeng was dumbfounded. The reason why he had deliberately chosen this time to make trouble was not only because today was the regular meeting of the Elder Council, but also because Bing Wuqing was in closed-door cultivation. At this time no one could stop him. Otherwise, no matter how strong he was, it would be a waste of effort. He could scare people like Hong Qingyuan, but how could he scare Bing Wuqing? I'm out for a walk when I'm happy. What can you do about it? Bing Wuqing glanced at him expressionlessly. Then she looked at Su Xiaodong. Seeing that he wasn't injured, she turned back and continued, You seem to be very awe-inspiring to kill someone in front of all the higher-ups of the Elder Council. Xue Jianfeng couldn't help but choke. Logically speaking, he and Bing Wuqing were experts of the same level and had the same background. There was no reason for him to be afraid of her. However, in fact, Bing Wuqing's strength had always been deeply ingrained in his heart. Instinctively, he didn't think he could defeat her, especially when his attack just now was superb. He had no confidence in front of Bing Wuqing. Suddenly Shui Jianfeng's expression changed. He looked at Bing Wuqing with shock and anger in his eyes. The scene just now made him think of an extremely embarrassing but logical possibility. During this period of time she had completely digested and absorbed the divine sense grass. Now she was the strongest expert in the gold core stage. Although it had only been half a month, there was very little information about the divine sense grass. No one knew how long it would take to absorb half a stalk of divine sense grass. Half a month was completely possible. Otherwise the scene just now couldn't be explained at all. They were both experts in the great perfection of the gold core stage. How could she block his attack so easily? The strongest expert in the gold core stage. This was the only reasonable explanation. What? You just pulled out your sword and killed people. Now you've become mute and can't speak? Bing Wuqing walked forward and sat down in the empty seat next to Hong Qingyuan, ignoring everyone's reaction. From the beginning to the end her attitude toward Shui Jianfeng was not so much contempt, but disregard. It seemed that she didn't take him seriously at all. The feeling of being ignored immediately enraged Shui Jianfeng. He gritted his teeth and growled in a low voice, "That's my seat." "Your seat?" Bing Wuqing was stunned. She turned to look at Hong Qingyuan and said, "Does he have a special position? He even has a special seat." "It was just approved today. He's the new executive deputy leader," Hong Qingyuan explained. He was as surprised as everyone else. He thought to himself that Bing Wuqing was really Shui Jianfeng's nemesis. Last time she made Shui Jianfeng speechless. This time when Shui Jianfeng flew into a rage he was forcefully suppressed by her again. It was amazing. Executive deputy leader? What the hell is that? Bing Wuqing was a little confused. Shui Jianfeng had made up this term for himself. Before this, there was no such position in the Snow Sword sect. He had never even heard of it. Humph, the executive deputy leader is second only to the sect leader. He's the second most important person in the entire Elder Council. You can't just sit in this position casually. Bing Wuqing, don't be too arrogant. Shui Jianfeng snorted coldly. Hong Qingyuan and the others had strange expressions on their faces when they heard this. Arrogant? How could you have the nerve to say such a thing? Is that so? Bing Wuqing didn't comment. She continued to look at Hong Qingyuan and said, "Can I ask who was the one who suggested that he be the executive deputy leader?" Everyone looked at Shui Jianfeng. No one said a word but their eyes said it all. "You suggested it yourself?" Even Bing Wuqing, who was usually expressionless, couldn't help but feel a little strange. She complained, "You made yourself the executive deputy leader? How shameless are you?" "I deserve it. What can you do about it?" Shui Jianfeng snorted angrily. He walked to the front and curled his lips. "Get out of my way. It's going to be 515 soon. I hope to continue to hit the 515 red envelope list. On May 15th the red envelope rain will reward the readers and promote the work. Love too. I'll do my best." Chapter 5349. P.S. Here's today's update and at the same time, garnering votes for Qidian's 515 Fan Festival. Everyone has 8 votes and the votes will be rewarded with coins. Begging for everyone's support and appreciation. Deserving of it? Bing Wuqing's expression became more and more strange. She looked at Hong Qingyuan and the others and said, "He's a fool and you guys are playing along with him. When did you guys become so playful?" Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. Although Bing Wuqing's words weren't very respectful, the truth was that they had been kidnapped by Shui Jianfeng and forced to acknowledge him as the managing deputy sect leader. After all, Shui Jianfeng was a golden core perfected cultivator. "What did you say?" Shui Jianfeng was completely enraged. He was afraid of her strength, but it didn't mean that he only dared to act like a coward in front of her. If he was really cornered he would also turn hostile. "Sneaking around behind my back and baring your teeth at me. Where did you get your confidence from?" When she said this, Bing Wuqing didn't even look at Shui Jianfeng. The disdain was almost obvious on her face. When Shui Jianfeng heard this he was instantly enraged. However, when he thought that the other party was very likely to be the strongest Aurus core expert in the legends, he didn't dare to act rashly. After all, he hadn't been overwhelmed by anger yet. He could only suppress his anger and clench his teeth as he said, "From what you're saying, Could it be that you want to snatch the position of deputy sect master from my hands? Bing Wuqing snorted and said disdainfully, I'm not interested in such a stupid position. Bing Wuqing, don't go too far. If it weren't for the fact that he was afraid that he couldn't beat her, Shui Jianfeng would have killed this dead-faced bastard with a sword. Wait, don't be impatient, both of you. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, Hong Qingyuan quickly stepped forward to mediate. If he really let Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng fight like this, although he could sit on the sidelines and watch them fight, then the situation would be completely out of control. If two Golden Core perfected experts really fought, even he wouldn't be able to stop them easily. After all, he was the sect leader. Hong Qingyuan's words were more or less effective. Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng stopped fighting. Her gaze then landed on him. With the two of your superb strength, it is reasonable for you to bear heavy responsibilities. Now that Jian Feng is already the deputy sect leader, Wu Qing should also arrange a position of equal strength to show fairness. Originally, because Wu Qing was in seclusion, I was going to postpone the discussion on this matter. Now that Wu Qing has come out of seclusion, how about we settle it together today? Hong Qingyuan said. He had been regretting it ever since Shui Jianfeng had flipped out. Now Bing Wuqing had suddenly appeared out of nowhere and interfered. Even though Shui Jianfeng was also somewhat condescending, it was a good thing for him. It was just nice for him to keep Shui Jianfeng in check, lest Shui Jianfeng become unruly and out of control. Equally matched positions? Bing Wuqing raised her brows slightly. The managing vice sect leader is second only to the sect leader. He is undoubtedly the number 2 figure in the Elder Guild. There's no such thing as an equal position. Shui Jianfeng was extremely displeased when he heard that. The title of managing vice sect leader was not something that he had come up with on a whim. He had racked his brains for it so that he could surpass Bing Wuqing and be on par with her. Wouldn't he have wasted all his efforts? Positions are all created by people. Before today, I had never heard of any managing vice sect leader. Isn't it still here now? Qi Qianqiu sneered. He, as the great elder, was supposed to be the second in command. Now, not only did the managing vice sect leader appear out of nowhere, even Bing Wuqing was about to climb over his head. He felt really upset. But then again, it was not that he was blind to the bigger picture. In this situation, he was definitely on Bing Wuqing's side. After all, it was better to have someone to keep her in check than not. Humph. Then tell me, what other position can be on par with the managing vice sect leader? Shui Jianfeng said disdainfully. Well. Qi Qianqiu pondered for a moment, then said, since there's already a managing vice sect leader, why don't we have a first vice sect leader? First vice sect leader? Shui Jianfeng frowned. He scolded, Great Elder, have you gone senile? The managing vice sect leader is already the number 1 vice sect leader. What first vice sect leader? That's not the same. The managing vice sect leader is the number 1 vice sect leader. Who said that both positions must be held concurrently? The second elder chuckled. The other elders who had the right to speak also chimed in. Since there was already a managing vice sect leader, they did not mind having another first vice sect leader. It would be perfect for Bing Wuqing and Shui Jianfeng to fight amongst themselves. They were more than happy to sit on the sidelines and reap the spoils later. Preposterous. Shui Jianfeng was so angry that he gritted his teeth. He hated Bing Wuqing again. If it were not for her, he would have succeeded in killing people to establish his dominance. These old farts would not have dared to pick a fight with him. What do you think? Hong Qingyuan looked at Bing Wuqing. At this point, Shui Jianfeng's attitude was obviously irrelevant. With all of them pushing for it, as long as Bing Wuqing herself agreed, the first vice sect leader position was already set in stone. Even if Shui Jianfeng and his father Shui Liping joined forces, they would not be able to stop it. Is it appropriate for something like this to happen without me, the managing vice sect leader's approval? Shui Jianfeng was still making his final struggle. In the end, Bing Wuqing glanced at him indifferently and said disdainfully, It's none of your business. Now that I'm too lazy to attack you, you'd better get lost. Otherwise, don't blame me for being merciless. Humph, what a big tone. I'd like to see it for myself. Shui Jianfeng said as he suddenly drew his sword again. Without hesitation, he soared into the sky and launched a powerful attack from above. His sword fell from the 9 heavens. Everyone, including Hong Qingyuan, turned pale with fright. This guy was really a lunatic. Not only did he attack Su Xiaodong just now, but now he even dared to attack Bing Wuqing, who was also a golden core perfected cultivator. Moreover, he used such a trump card right from the start. The entire meeting hall was instantly in chaos. Everyone's first reaction was to dodge and retreat subconsciously. After all, swords had no eyes. Although they were all golden core experts, once they were hit by the aftermath of a golden core perfected cultivator's attack, it would be fatal. However, it turned out that they had been overthinking things. There were no aftershocks, nor were there any innocent bystanders caught in the crossfire. In the face of Xue Jianfeng's powerful attack, Bing Wuqing used only one move to easily end the battle. It was her signature move, the merciless ice stance. In the past, although the merciless ice stance had also exerted great pressure on others, it was ultimately just pressure. When faced with experts of the same level, it could at most have a limited effect. However, the scene that was unfolding in front of everyone's eyes right now had completely overturned all their previous understanding. Chapter 5350. Bing Wuqing had only unleashed the merciless ice force, and Xue Jianfeng's entire body was covered in a thin layer of ice. He did not even manage to fully unleash the sword descends 9 heavens, and just like that he fell stiffly from midair like a lifelike ice sculpture. For a moment, everyone was dumbfounded. After a moment, Xue Liping suddenly reacted with a shout and rushed up to help the ice sculpture up. He asked in a terrified tone, "Feng, are you all right?" This. Hong Qingyuan opened his mouth, but could not utter a proper sentence. Judging from Xue Jianfeng's power just now, he could tell that even if Xue Jianfeng's power was not as steady and experienced as his, he was definitely not weak among those in the Golden Core Great Completion. Yet such a powerful existence was actually taken care of by Bing Wuqing so easily without even batting an eye. Was she still human? It didn't make sense. Bing Wuqing was just a golden core perfected cultivator after all. How could there be such a huge gap between the same level? After a long while, the thin layer of ice on the surface of Xue Jianfeng finally broke. His face was pale and he hunched his body in an extremely sorry state. Panting heavily, he stammered, "Most powerful stage." As soon as he said that, the crowd was in an uproar. Everyone, including Hong Qingyuan, looked at Bing Wuqing with even more respect. Could she really be the legendary most powerful golden core expert? It wasn't impossible. Although neither Bing Wuqing nor Xue Jianfeng mentioned anything about the divine knowledge grass, with their strength, it would be easy for them to participate in the primeval trial. It wasn't impossible for them to find the legendary divine knowledge grass. And the overwhelming strength that Bing Wuqing displayed just now could only be explained by the fact that she was the strongest golden core expert. In the face of the subconscious reverence from the crowd, Bing Wuqing didn't care. She curled her lips slightly and said, "Who told me that she was the strongest golden core expert? Wasn't she?" Xue Jianfeng, who had finally managed to catch his breath, was stunned when he heard that. He assumed that since the other party had come out of seclusion, she must have used the other half of the divine knowledge grass, which meant that she was naturally the strongest golden core expert. Was there anything wrong with that? Bing Wuqing smiled, which was rare, but it was a mocking sneer. "Why don't you feel it again?" "Feel what?" Before Xue Jianfeng could react, Bing Wuqing raised her hand slightly and unleashed her merciless ice force once again. A thin layer of ice instantly covered him again. However, with the previous example, Xue Jianfeng's reaction was extremely fast this time. He immediately unleashed his strongest protective layer of qi without any regard for the price. Even though he would inevitably be in a somewhat sorry state, he wouldn't be turned into a human-shaped ice sculpture without any resistance. After all, he was an expert in the peak of the gold core realm. Otherwise it would be too embarrassing. Only so. Xue Jianfeng pretended to be calm and wanted to mock him. However, before he could finish his words, his entire body suddenly trembled. His knees went soft and he knelt down on the spot. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. No one would have thought that this guy would actually kneel in public. What the hell was he doing? Of course, Xue Jianfeng didn't kneel willingly. At this moment, his expression was incomparably sinister and conflicted, because what was trapping him wasn't just the thin layer of ice on the surface. It was the insides of his 2 legs that had been frozen. He had no choice but to kneel. That wasn't what shocked him the most. What really shocked him was that the merciless ice force that he sensed earlier was not the power of an expert in the Golden Core realm. It was clearly a level higher, an existence that was completely above the Golden Core realm. It was a nascent soul realm old monster. Nascent soul realm old monster? How could you be a nascent soul realm old monster? Shui Jianfeng was practically going crazy. He couldn't react the first time because the other party hadn't used her full strength. But now Bing Wuqing had used her full strength. His 2 legs were frozen to this extent and were almost crippled. If he still couldn't react in time, he would be too slow. What? Nascent soul realm old monster? Everyone present, including Hong Qingyuan, was collectively shocked. Each of them looked at Bing Wuqing in disbelief. Just now, the range of the merciless ice force was controlled to be extremely small. Therefore, although they were very close to it, they didn't feel its power at all. They just assumed that it was the strongest Golden Core realm. Who would have thought that it was actually a nascent soul realm old monster? But how was this possible? The birth of any expert in the nascent soul realm. That was a huge matter that would affect the entire structure of the small immemorial underworld. And in the entire small immemorial underworld, although there weren't as many experts in the Golden Core realm as there were dogs everywhere, the overall number was not small. Basically, any sect or clan of a high level would have a few or even a dozen of them. Snow Sword faction was considered very rare. If it were the top 4 sects and clans, they wouldn't even be able to count them with one hand. There were no less than 3 digits of experts in the Golden Core realm, and every single one of them had been scheming to break through to the nascent soul realm. But how many of them had succeeded in the end? The reality was that in the last 20 years, the number of experts in the small immemorial underworld who had recently advanced to the nascent soul realm was 0. Not a single one. Condensing the nascent soul sounded like a simple task, but the difficulty involved was beyond the imagination of ordinary people. Just the nascent condensation golden core, which could only be obtained by luck, was enough to make everyone flinch. Even if they were lucky enough to obtain it, the entire breakthrough process would take at least a few years. How could it be so fast? Half a month ago she was still in the Golden Core realm, but now she had become a nascent soul realm old monster the moment she came out. What kind of heavenly book was this? But then again, if it had been someone else, they would not have believed it. But when it came to Bing Wuqing, Hong Qingyuan and the others really could not be sure. It was not just Bing Wuqing but also Shui Jianfeng and Leng Leng. They could not see through these people. It had only been slightly more than a year since she started her training in the secular world, yet Leng Leng had soared from the early stage of foundation building all the way to the foundation building perfected. This was unprecedented in the history of the small immemorial underworld. But compared to the other two, it was still acceptable. Someone had provided her with elixirs and she was naturally talented, so this could be explained. But Bing Wuqing had directly soared from the early stage of Golden Core realm to the Golden Core realm perfected. How could this be explained? One had to know that the Golden Core realm and the foundation building realm were 2 completely different concepts. Even if it was possible to achieve this by swallowing elixirs, where could so many golden cores and golden cores come from? Not even the entire small immemorial underworld had so many, right? That was not all. What made everyone even more speechless was Shui Jianfeng. This fellow had directly gone from the foundation building perfected to the Golden Core realm perfected. This was practically a breakthrough. Chapter 53-51. If one could succeed in reaching the Gold Core realm by simply taking a stroll in the secular world, then what was the primordial underworld? Most importantly, it was guaranteed to reach Gold Core consummation within a year. Was there any justice in this? Bing Wuqing wouldn't say these things and neither would Shui Jianfeng. Even if Hong Qingyuan and the others were itching to know, they could only hold it in and not press them. After all, they were both Gold Core consummation experts. Only nascent soul realm experts were qualified to interrogate them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do anything about it. In the end, they hadn't even figured out the matter of Gold Core consummation, and suddenly a nascent soul realm expert appeared. Was she crazy? However, the crowd's first reaction wasn't to believe her. Instead, they thought that Shui Jianfeng might have been scared out of his wits. He assumed that she was a nascent soul realm expert because he had been completely defeated by her. After all, it wasn't shameful for a Gold Core consummation expert to be defeated by a nascent soul realm expert. In the end, Bing Wuqing's next words made everyone completely dumbfounded. You only found out now? No one has such a slow reaction. The crowd gasped one after another. Everyone's mouth, including Hong Qingyuan's, opened so wide that a duck's egg could be stuffed inside. The same thing was written all over their faces. She really was a nascent soul realm expert. Hearing this affirmative answer, Xue Jianfeng's already pained expression became even more pained. He couldn't hold himself up anymore and collapsed to the ground, howling in pain. If she was just the strongest gold core cultivator, even if he wasn't as strong as her, he could still fight. But now she had suddenly become a nascent soul realm expert. What could he do? He would never have guessed that the main purpose of Bing Wuqing's seclusion for half a month was not to get the half-consciousness grass from him, but to get the supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pill from Lin Yi. In half a month, not only did she use up the half-consciousness grass, but she also used the supreme-grade golden nascent gathering pill to condense her nascent soul. Most importantly, she actually succeeded. Bing Wuqing's achievements in the primordial underworld could only be described as unprecedented. Even from Lin Yi's point of view, Bing Wuqing's innate talent was extremely important. Bing Wuqing's existence even reminded him of Lung Rufin, the little brother he had just taken in on Heaven Stage Island. Lung Rufin was the signature figure of the East Continent's Soaring Cloud Academy. There was no doubt that he was extremely talented. Of course, Lung Rufin was an expert of the mysterious ascension stage, and the strength of the two of them was far from being comparable. But in terms of talent alone, Lin Yi felt that Bing Wuqing was at the same level as him. This was almost the highest level, or else he wouldn't have invested so many elixirs on Bing Wuqing for no reason. Although Lin Yi had the divine pesticide cauldron, as long as he had enough elixirs, he could have as many top-grade elixirs as he wanted. However, the landlord did not have any surplus food. If he really found a piece of trash and randomly threw elixirs at him, he would be struck by lightning. Sometimes Lin Yi couldn't help but wonder if he could defeat freaks like Lung Rufin and Bing Wuqing if he didn't have so many heaven-defying cheats. This was probably a huge suspense. Feng. Xue Liping was completely dumbfounded when he saw this scene. He quickly rushed over and picked up Xue Jianfeng, who was in pain. In the past, he, as the vice-sect leader, was definitely an incredible figure. But now that Xue Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing had risen to prominence, Xue Liping suddenly became insignificant. Today's events, other than echoing his son in the beginning, he was basically in the background. No one paid attention to him at all. It was only at times like this that he was able to get some screen time, but it was only a sad scene. Bing Wuqing, what did you do to my son? This is the Elders' Council, and he is the new executive vice-sect leader. Do you want to challenge the entire Elders' Council? Xue Liping questioned with a face full of grief and indignation. He didn't hesitate to put a big hat on Bing Wuqing. He wasn't too sure if the other party was really a nascent soul old monster, but he had to say it. Everyone turned to look at them when they heard this. Then two people immediately became the focus of attention. One was undoubtedly Bing Wuqing, and the other was Hong Qingyuan, who was supposed to be in charge of the situation as the sect leader. Hong Qingyuan didn't say anything. He looked at Bing Wuqing with everyone else. No one knew what he was thinking at this moment. Perhaps he was digesting Bing Wuqing's true strength, or perhaps he was thinking of corresponding countermeasures. After all, if the other party was really a nascent soul old monster, how he should deal with her was not something he could decide alone. He had to be extremely cautious. Challenge the entire Elders' Council? Bing Wuqing looked at him, then at Hong Qingyuan and the others. She asked, according to what you're saying, when he attacked Elder Su just now, he also challenged the entire Elders' Council? Xue Liping choked. Under everyone's strange gazes, his old face flushed red. He tried to defend himself. That's different. Su Xiaodong offended his superior by standing in the way. This is a serious crime. Even if he was killed by Feng'er's sword, he deserved it. Blocking the way is offending your superior? Since when did our Snow Sword sect become so strict? Is it a new rule set by vice-sect leader Xue? Su Xiaodong immediately stood up and retorted. In the past, she might not have had the guts to do so. But now that she had a strong person like Bing Wuqing to back her up, she could finally vent her anger. Su Xiaodong, don't push your luck. Xue Liping suppressed his anger and glared at her. I think this sentence is more suitable for you and your son. This time it was Bing Wuqing who spoke. She looked at them disdainfully and said, I'll say it here. In the future, no matter who opposes Lung Lung, that person will be my enemy. Don't talk to me about the sect's rules. I don't care at all. Remember, the outcome of going against me is death unless you can survive under my hands. Her words made everyone break out in a cold sweat. It wasn't just Xue Liping and Xue Jianfeng, even Hong Qingyuan and the others felt their eyelids twitching. Those who didn't know better would think that they had entered a mountain bandit's lair. Her words were too unbridled. But then again, if Bing Wuqing was really a nascent soul realm old monster, he really did have the right to say such things. One had to know that the rules of any sect were set by the nascent soul realm old monsters. Standing at the top of the immemorial underworld, they naturally had the right to do so. Scram. Bing Wuqing said the last word. Xue Liping wanted to stiffen his neck and continue to be stubborn, but after Xue Jianfeng, who was in great pain, growled at him, he immediately gave in. He didn't dare to say another word and quickly retreated with Xue Jianfeng on his back. Chapter 53-52. Just a moment ago he was still flaunting his prowess as if from now on, the Elder Council would be decided by the person surnamed Xue. But now, in less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, he had already left with his tail between his legs. Wasn't the change in style a little too quick? No one spoke for a long time. Finally, it was Hong Qingyuan who broke the silence. That. Hong Qingyuan was just about to call Bing Wuqing by her name, but he thought that it would be overstepping his authority if she was really a nascent soul old monster. So he could only say vaguely, "Please forgive me for asking, but have you really condensed your nascent soul?" This was a serious matter and he couldn't afford to be careless. He had to brace himself and confirm it 100%. Otherwise he would become a laughingstock. "Do you need me to show you?" As Bing Wuqing spoke, she released an unprecedentedly powerful aura from her body. This was different from the merciless ice force. Strictly speaking, the merciless ice force was an offensive technique that she could control at will. Moreover, with her current level of control, she was extremely proficient in it. Apart from the person herself, no one would be able to get a clear idea of what she was capable of, which was why they were suspicious of her. But at this moment the aura was different. It was the most intuitive feeling. Everyone immediately understood that this was definitely a genuine original soul realm old monster. "Greetings, Grand Elder." Hong Qingyuan no longer had the slightest doubt. He hurriedly led everyone to pay their respects, not daring to show the slightest bit of neglect or disrespect. Regardless of Bing Wuqing's previous identity and regardless of her seniority, according to the ancestral teachings, as long as there was someone in the sect who had advanced to the nascent soul realm, that person would automatically become the Grand Supreme Elder. Everyone, from the head of the sect to the ordinary disciples, had to pay their respects to her. Otherwise, it would be seen as deceiving her master. Bing Wuqing was not surprised by this. She nodded slightly and waved her hand. "Get up, all of you." "Thank you, Supreme Elder." Only then did Hong Qingyuan lead the rest of them to stand before Bing Wuqing respectfully, not daring to put on any of the usual dignified airs. Showing off in front of a nascent soul old monster was akin to courting death. This was a principle that even Xue Jianfeng knew. "Since you've given Xue Jianfeng the position of deputy sect leader, shouldn't you also give me a position?" Bing Wuqing asked casually. Hong Qingyuan and the others couldn't help but be stunned. He was already a Grand Elder, what position did he still need? "Is there a problem?" Bing Wuqing glanced at him. Please enlighten me, Grand Elder." Hong Qingyun broke out in a cold sweat under his stare. Logically speaking, as the leader of a sect, he had dealt with many nascent soul old monsters in the past, so he shouldn't be this nervous. The key was that Bing Wuqing was definitely an anomaly. She had always had an eccentric temper, and Hong Qingyun hadn't had many dealings with Bing Wuqing in the past. Besides, she was moody just now and he couldn't read her pulse. "There's already a Grand Elder and now you're calling me Grand Elder. Aren't you messing around? Why don't we follow Xue Jianfeng's example and get an executive Grand Supreme Elder?" Perhaps it was because she had just broken through and was in a good mood, but there was a rare hint of ridicule in Bing Wuqing's tone. Executive Grand Elder? Everyone's eyes widened when they heard this. What was going on? That. Hong Qingyun hesitated for a moment, then smiled bitterly and said, "I'm afraid this isn't something we can decide. You know too that the Elders Guild can only discuss and decide matters of the sect below me, the sect leader. Strictly speaking, it's Xue Jianfeng's executive vice elder. It's already a little overboard for us to decide on our own, not to mention your executive Grand Supreme Elder." I'm afraid this matter has to be discussed between you and Elder Tong. We don't have the right to express our opinions. Elder Tong was the original Grand Supreme Elder of the Snow Sword faction. Didn't Elder Tong say he's in seclusion? You want me to call him out directly? Bing Wuqing frowned. Then why don't you wait a little longer for Elder Tong to come out of seclusion before talking to him in detail? Hong Qingyuan suggested carefully. I can't wait that long, Bing Wuqing replied casually. Hong Qingyuan choked instantly. He turned to look at Qi Qianqiu and the others, feeling even more conflicted than before. They'd finally gotten rid of the lawless Xue Jianfeng, and now a nascent soul old monster with an eccentric temperament had arrived. Wasn't this even harder to serve? Can't wait? Then what should they do? Hong Qingyun was racking his brains for a reply when Bing Wuqing's next words solved his dilemma. I'm going out for a while. We'll talk about the matter of the Executive Grand Supreme Elder when I come back. You're going out. Hong Qingyun and the others were stunned. I'm going to the North Island, Bing Wuqing said dispassionately. Do you know anyone in the North Island? Hong Qingyuan asked. Interrogate me? Bing Wuqing's expression softened a little, which was rare for her. She immediately reverted to her usual expressionless face, which was intimidating. No. Your disciple wouldn't dare. Hong Qingyun shook his head quickly and explained, Your disciple doesn't mean to be disrespectful at all. I'm just thinking that if you're going to visit other sects, your disciple should arrange for a guard of honor to accompany you as soon as possible. Once a new nascent soul realm old monster appeared in any sect, he or she would basically go out to visit other sects and show his or her face. This was to show off his or her strength, and there were many rituals involved, so he or she must not be neglected. Otherwise, even if people seemed afraid on the surface, they would privately laugh at him or her for being a nouveau riche who didn't even know the basic visiting rules. No, I'm just going to see someone. There's no need to go through all that trouble. By the way, when I'm not here, you guys look after Lung Lung. If anything happens to her before I come back, I'll hold you responsible, Bing Wuqing reminded them. Yes. Hong Qingyuan and the others were stunned. They didn't know why Bing Wuqing was taking care of Lung Lung so much, but since Bing Wuqing had said so, they had to protect Lung Lung even if they had to risk their lives. Otherwise, they would be going against the nascent soul realm old monsters. How many lives did they have? Fortunately, Xue Jianfeng had already suffered a great loss just now. The injury on his leg was normal, and he wouldn't be able to recover without a few months' time. Of course, if Hong Qingyuan and the others were really determined, it would be useless for Xue Jianfeng to act recklessly. Hong Qingyuan alone was enough to suppress him. Previously they were just wary, but now that they had Bing Wuqing to back them up, there was nothing to be afraid of. One was a golden core perfected, and the other was a nascent soul realm old monster. There was no need to consider which side to choose. Bing Wuqing nodded and immediately asked someone to prepare a snow sword sect's best flying spirit beast. Under the gazes of Hong Qingyuan and the others, it rose into the sky and soon became a black dot that disappeared into the horizon. Our snow sword sect is finally about to usher in a new era. Qi Qianqiu sighed, half gratified and half sorrowful. Chapter 53-53. However, things were different now. With the addition of Bing Wuqing, a nascent soul expert, the snow sword faction had two nascent soul old monsters. Even if this top-notch combat force could not be compared to the 4 major sects and clans, it was undoubtedly one of the best among the 10 minor sects and clans. In the past, although the Snow Sword faction's status was not bad, it did not have much say in the Middle Island Alliance. From now on, this rule would probably have to be changed. Yes, the Patriarch's spirit is here. There is hope for our Snow Sword faction to prosper. Hong Qingyuan looked at the horizon, his eyes shining. Even though the sudden rise of Bing Wuqing and Xue Jianfeng was a big problem for him, as long as he could handle them well, the strength of the entire Snow Sword faction would definitely improve by leaps and bounds. How could Hong Qingyuan not have any ambitions to become a sect leader? He had a premonition that the time for the Snow Sword faction to flourish had come. After leaving the Snow Sword faction, Bing Wuqing drove the flying spirit beast straight to the North Island. The person she was going to see was naturally Lin Yi. Xue Jianfeng had already been crippled by him, and he had just said some harsh words in front of everyone in the elders' meeting. Before he left, he had specially reminded him. In his opinion, this was enough to complete the task that Lin Yi had given him before they parted. At least in the short term, no one in the Snow Sword faction would dare to provoke Cold, unless that person was crazy. Since Cold no longer had any worries, there was naturally no need for Bing Wuqing to stay in the Snow Sword faction. People like Xue Jianfeng might enjoy the feeling of being the highest supreme elder, but obviously Bing Wuqing was not. She had no interest in this kind of thing. Now that she had successfully broken through to the nascent soul realm, the first thing she had to do was to see Lin Yi, in addition to completing the task that Lin Yi had entrusted to her. There were two reasons. The first was to show her loyalty. It was all thanks to Lin Yi that he was able to become a nascent soul cultivator in such a short period of time. If it weren't for Lin Yi constantly giving him these top-quality pills, then it would simply be unimaginable. Therefore he had to express his heartfelt gratitude and show his loyalty to Lin Yi. Otherwise, if he became arrogant and thought that he was strong enough, then he wouldn't need to fear anyone anymore. Then he would definitely die a miserable death. Since Lin Yi could create him, he could naturally destroy him easily as well. Bing Wuqing's heart was as clear as a mirror. Don't forget that Lin Dongfang had personally planted a spell in his body. The second reason was to ask Lin Yi about the next step of her mission. Lin Yi had spent so many top-quality pills to make him a nascent soul old monster who stood at the top of the immemorial underworld. Bing Wuqing believed that it was not as simple as asking her to protect Cold. Intuition told her that Lin Yi must have a deeper reason for doing so, and it must be related to the core. It was nothing in the past, but now that she had become a nascent soul old monster, every move she made was being watched. Bing Wuqing knew that she had to think carefully before she did anything, and most importantly she had to figure out Lin Yi's attitude. Otherwise, if she accidentally went against Lin Yi's wishes, it would be an undeserved disaster. Apart from that, Bing Wuqing actually had another selfish motive. She knew very well that only by behaving obediently would she be able to continue obtaining supreme-grade golden nascent condensing pills from Lin Yi. Although nascent soul old monsters were already standing at the pinnacle of the immemorial martial world, to her the early nascent soul stage was just the beginning. Following a freak like Lin Yi, Bing Wuqing never thought that the nascent soul stage was the end. In fact, whether it was Lin Yi or the core, both were enough to completely overturn her previous view of the world. To quote a saying, her future goal must be the sea of stars, and the nascent soul stage was just a starting point. But then again, going to the North Island so openly was equivalent to exposing his identity to some people, such as Xue Jianfeng, whom she had just taught a lesson to. Of course, Bing Wuqing wasn't stupid. She had already weighed the pros and cons before she did this. In fact, the fact that she was Lin Yi's follower could no longer be kept a secret from the moment she successfully condensed her nascent soul. Even if she didn't go to the North Island to meet Lin Yi, Xue Jianfeng and those people from the core could easily deduce that there was something fishy behind it. After all, the core didn't have the nature-defying technology that allowed her to condense her nascent soul so quickly. In fact, as Bing Wuqing had expected, Xue Jianfeng was the first to realize that she was an expert of the nascent soul stage. That was why he admitted defeat and retreated so decisively. One had to know that Bing Wuqing, who was in the same camp, and Bing Wuqing, who was in the opposite camp, were two completely different things to Xue Jianfeng. The former usually wouldn't do anything to him and he could still brace himself to save face, but the latter would really kill him. Xue Jianfeng was arrogant and presumptuous, but he wasn't stupid at all. After realizing this inside story, he didn't hesitate to give up on trying to be brave, because that would definitely be courting death. Feng, how's the injury on your leg? After Xue Liping carried Xue Jianfeng back to the cave abode, he looked at his son's blood-soaked legs helplessly. I won't die. Xue Jianfeng gritted his teeth and endured the intense pain. Bing Wuqing didn't kill him, but his legs were frozen. But this wasn't an ordinary freeze, it was an injury caused by the advanced version of Heartless Ice Force. It wasn't easy to treat the injury in a short period of time, and if it wasn't treated properly in time, it could easily leave indelible sequelae. His legs might even be disabled forever. This was a devastating blow to an expert of the Golden Core perfected realm who was determined to advance to the next level. This injury is no small matter. I'll call the people from the medical hall over for you, Xue Liping said after some thought. There's no need. The medical hall is filled with Qi Qianqiu's people, and now that Bing Wuqing is in power, those good-for-nothings won't do their best to treat my injuries. They might even do something behind the scenes. Xue Jianfeng reached out to stop him. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't want to be treated, but he didn't want to be examined. If the poisonous gas in his body was found, it would be troublesome. Then what should we do? We can't just bear it like this, can we? Shui Liping said with a frown. He had always been very concerned about this son of his. Now that Shui Jianfeng had suddenly become a golden core perfected realm expert, and his strength was a notch higher than his father's, he was naturally even more concerned. How about this? Help me send a message to the people outside. They'll have a way to deal with this. Shui Jianfeng said, enduring the pain. People outside? Shui Liping was stunned. Chapter 53-54. The reason why the bespectacled professor thought highly of Shui Jianfeng and even came forward to fight for him to be specially trained was not only because of his talent and strength, but also because his father was the vice leader of the sect. Once he could rope him in with Shui Liping's connections, many things would be easier to handle, and it would save them a lot of trouble in the early stages of entering the immemorial underworld. Of course, Shui Jianfeng did not forget this most important task. In fact, from the first day he returned to the Snow Sword School, he had already been doing his father's work. It was just that this matter was of great importance and he could not make up his mind until he saw how terrifying the center was. After all, this was a matter of life and death for their Shui clan. If they succeeded, then they would soar to great heights. But if they failed, then they would definitely suffer a huge loss. This was related to the future and fate of the entire clan, so Shui Liping had no choice but to be careful. Shui Jianfeng was not in a hurry. He knew that this kind of thing needed a process of acceptance. Besides, even with the center's methods, entering the immemorial underworld was not something that could be done in a day or two. During this period of time, they would at most send a small advance team over to get a feel of things. It was not the time to make a big move yet, so he was not in a hurry to get his father to choose a side. But now that things had happened so suddenly, and Bing Wuqing's sudden rise had completely disrupted their rhythm. She was a nascent soul realm old monster. In this situation, if they did not find the center to discuss this quickly, Shui Jianfeng felt like he was a rooster waiting to be slaughtered. If Bing Wuqing was unhappy, she could take his life at any time. Shui Liping hesitated for a moment with a gloomy expression, but finally stomped out and prepared to contact the center's advance team according to Shui Jianfeng's instructions. It was not that he did not believe in the center's strength. In fact, with Shui Jianfeng and Bing Wuqing as two living examples, he no longer had any doubts about the center's great strength. He just had not clearly weighed the pros and cons. Now that Shui Jianfeng was seriously injured and Bing Wuqing was so overbearing, if he chose to retreat unconditionally, the other party would definitely take a mile after taking an inch. Shui Liping could see clearly that his future days would only get harder and harder. So unless he gave up his son Shui Jianfeng and was willing to be a coward. Otherwise he had no other choice. Looking at Shui Liping's back as he left, the corners of Shui Jianfeng's mouth curled into a strange smile for some reason. It wasn't because his father had finally made a wise decision, but because of Bing Wuqing. Indeed, Bing Wuqing, who had suddenly become a nascent soul old monster, was a huge threat to him. But at the same time, it also exposed the other party's background. Since he had betrayed the core, then no matter how strong he was already a dead man. Shui Jianfeng did not doubt this point at all. Although Shui Jianfeng's legs were heavily injured by the other party's merciless ice force, in reality he couldn't help but feel excited and even elated. Bing Wuqing was a traitor. This meant that he had one less strong competitor in the fight for resources in the center. In terms of talent and strength, the others were no match for her. At the very least, he'd already become the only target that was worthy of the center's fostering, and the benefits he represented was obvious. To a certain extent, this was simply a blessing in disguise. North Island Blue Cloud Sect. Under the gaze of a crowd of disciples, a giant snow eagle descended from the sky. Everyone looked at it and started talking about it. Although all the flying spirit beasts of the ancient sects were mainly spirit birds, that was only for the ordinary elders and disciples, and some of the higher-ups with special status. The flying spirit beasts they used were often the symbolic spirit beasts of their respective sections. For example, Hong Zijuan, the leader of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, rode on a spiritual eagle. Snow Eagle was the symbolic spirit beast of the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island. Seeing Bing Wuqing dismount from the back of the Snow Eagle, everyone looked at each other. Although the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island and the Snow Sword sect in the Middle Island were both part of the 10 small sects and families, one belonged to the North Island Alliance, while the other belonged to the Middle Island Alliance. They had almost no contact with each other, and the higher-ups of the sects rarely visited each other. What was going on today? May I ask who you are? A supervising disciple walked up and asked. Snow Sword sect. Bing Wuching said lightly. Hearing this name, everyone was shocked. Bing Wuching was a real celebrity in the small Jianghu of the primeval times. Back then she was the most famous person in the Foundation establishment stage, and almost all the disciples of the primeval sects looked up to a genius. Even in this remote North Island she was well known. But why would such an influential figure suddenly appear here? Your Excellency, what brings you to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? The supervising disciple asked, neither servile nor overbearing. I'm here to see someone. His name is Lin Yi, and he's the primeval uncle master of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Bing Wuching spoke bluntly. Since she had come to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island publicly, there was no need for her to be secretive. Even if she publicly revealed her relationship with Lin Yi, she believed that Lin Yi wouldn't mind. Primeval uncle master? The supervising disciple was slightly stunned. He thought that since she had come from afar, she was most likely here to visit on behalf of the Snow Sword sect. He didn't expect that she was here to see Lin Yi. Is there a problem? Looking at his weird expression, Bing Wuching frowned. The supervising disciple hesitated. Nowadays, Lin Yi, the so-called primeval uncle master, was a highly controversial figure to the entire Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Because he stood on the opposite side of highest elder Qinjiao, except for Enrich and the other disciples basically stayed away from him. After all, in their opinion, going against a nascent soul realm old monster was simply courting death, and there was no possibility of winning. Go and ask for instructions. Oh wait. Bing Wuching didn't know what happened to Lin Yi and the others, but judging from the supervising disciple's reaction, she had vaguely sensed that something was wrong. Of course, before figuring out the specific situation, she couldn't act rashly. She could only wait and see. All right. The supervising disciple didn't dare to be negligent. Even if Bing Wuching didn't say it, he had to report this kind of thing as soon as possible. How to deal with this uninvited guest wasn't something that a mere supervising disciple should worry about. Soon after, a few high-level gold core cultivators of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island hurriedly showed up. Their leader was none other than Lu Pingon, the direct disciple of highest elder Qinjiao. Chapter 53-55. After all, he was not only powerful and experienced but more importantly he had the solid backing of the highest elder. In this aspect the other gold core stage seniors could only look up to him. Looking at this scene, Bing Wuching became more and more suspicious, because she didn't see Enrich. Logically speaking, Enrich was the one who had the closest relationship with Lin Yi among all the senior members of Green Cloud sect in the North Island, and he had also dealt with her before. Logically speaking, Enrich should be the most suitable person to receive her at this time, so why didn't he even show his face? Bing Wuching, my little friend, you've come from afar. Please forgive us for not going out to welcome you. Lu Pingon smiled and cupped his hands in greeting, behaving extremely politely. At least from his point of view he was already very polite. Even if Bing Wuching was also a golden core expert, she was still a junior to him. Addressing her as a young friend was already a form of flattery. Little did he know that Bing Wuching was not even in the gold core stage now. He wasn't giving her face at all but was trying to flatter himself. It's okay. Bing Wuching didn't care about this at all. Her reputation meant nothing to her and she had never considered such things. She went straight to the point and said, "Can I pay a visit to your Grandmaster Lin Yi now? May I ask if there's anything special, my little friend Bing Wuching? Is this your personal wish or the wish of your sect?" Lu Pingon asked tentatively. Personal, Bing Wuching said directly. Lu Pingon raised his eyebrows, looked at the other gold core stage seniors beside him, and breathed a sigh of relief. If Bing Wuching came to visit Lin Yi on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, it would be a big problem for them. After all, it was likely that Lin Yi had a close relationship with the Snow Sword sect. If they wanted to deal with Lin Yi, they would have to consider the feelings of the Snow Sword sect. Fortunately, this was Bing Wuqing's personal matter, so there was nothing to worry about. I'm sorry, but Grandmaster Lin Yi is currently in seclusion. I'm afraid you've made a wasted trip. Please go back. Lu Pingon immediately asked her to leave without hesitation. Seclusion. Bing Wuqing frowned even more. If she hadn't sensed something strange just now, she might have believed it. But at this moment his intuition told him that there was definitely a problem. As an expert, especially a super genius like Bing Wuqing, her instincts had always been extremely sharp. Not bad. Grandmaster Lin Yi has been in seclusion ever since he arrived here, and no one dares to disturb him. Hence, if my young friend Bing Wuqing wishes to visit him, I'm afraid you'll have to wait for the next opportunity, Lu Pingon said with an apologetic look on his face. He looked rather sincere. Unfortunately, Bing Wuqing obviously wouldn't give up so easily. He glanced at Lu Pingon and said, "Take me to the ascending heaven cliff." Lu Pingon was stunned for a moment. The other party's tone really confused him. Rather than saying it was a request, it sounded more like a condescending order. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? It was understandable that a talented genius like Bing Wuqing would be a little arrogant, but the problem was that this wasn't the Snow Sword sect, but the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. She had come all the way to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island to act like a tyrant. Didn't he think about the consequences of his actions? Moreover, even if Bing Wuqing's attitude was better and she made a request in a proper manner, Lu Pingon would never agree, because the request itself was already out of line. Although the Ascending Heaven Cliff was mostly used to imprison special people, it was a place of great significance to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Apart from the high-level Golden Core cultivators, even the disciples of the sect couldn't easily approach it, let alone open it to an outsider like Bing Wuqing. Moreover, Lin Yi was currently imprisoned on the Ascending Heaven Cliff. Now was the time for the standoff, so how could Lu Pingon allow an outsider like Bing Wuqing to see him? I'm sorry, but the Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even the disciples of the sect can't approach it casually. Your request is a little too much. If it weren't for the other party's identity, Lu Pingon would have definitely started to chase her away without hesitation. However, she was after all a genius who used to be unparalleled in the Snow Sword sect of the Middle Island. If he embarrassed her too much, it would be equivalent to humiliating the entire Snow Sword sect to a certain extent. He didn't want to cause such unnecessary trouble. The Ascending Heaven Cliff is a forbidden area? Bing Wuqing raised her eyebrows. The more the other party tried to deny it, the more suspicious she became. However, she couldn't just fall out with him before figuring out the specific situation. She glanced at Lu Pingon and said, "Does this mean you can't make the decision?" The corner of Lu Pingon's eye twitched, and an inexplicable anger rose in his heart. What kind of contemptuous look was that? She was too condescending. That's right. Lu Pingon still didn't fall out with her. Holding back his anger, he said, "If you want to let people enter the Ascending Heaven Cliff forbidden area, you have to at least have the right to decide. However, it just so happens that our sect leader and deputy sect leader are both busy, so we can't do it for the time being." Lu Pingon was already very well-mannered to be able to say this much. If it were anyone else, even if they didn't fall out with her face-to-face, they would definitely leave in a huff. "Bing Wuqing, you're just a new junior. Why are you acting like a big boss here? What about the Grand Supreme Elder? Your Grand Supreme Elder should have the right to do so, right? Take me to him," Bing Wuqing said smoothly. "What?" Lu Pingon and the others were collectively dumbfounded when they heard this. They looked at each other for a moment, then said, "You want to see our Grand Supreme Elder?" "Yes, you're not going to tell me that your Grand Supreme Elder isn't here either, are you?" Bing Wuqing asked casually. "The Grand Supreme Elder is here and he does have the right to do so, but he's the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. How can you, an outsider, meet him just because you say so? Do you think that your Grand Supreme Elder will agree to meet anyone who comes and asks to see your Snow Sword sect's Grand Supreme Elder?" Lu Pingon's face was tinged with sarcasm, and the other Gold Core stage higher-ups also looked contemptuous. Was there something wrong with this guy's brain? Asking to see the Grand Supreme Elder as soon as he opened his mouth? Did he really think that the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island belonged to his family? That depends on who it is. Bing Wuqing wasn't angry about this. People like her who were extremely rational and pragmatic rarely got angry with others. What was the use of getting angry? Besides, they were on a different level now, so she wouldn't get angry easily. Chapter 53-56. If you're here on behalf of the Snow Sword sect, we can still consider it. But since it's your own business, there's nothing more to say. That's all I have to say. We've already given you and your sect a lot of face. Goodbye. What if I don't go? Bing Wuqing looked indifferent. Hearing that, Lu Pingon and the others' faces darkened. Their tone changed and they said, "Those who come from afar are guests. The Blue Cloud sect of the North Island is not a place without rules. But if you insist on challenging our sect's bottom line, don't blame us for being impolite." As soon as he said that, several high-level golden core cultivators immediately surrounded Bing Wuqing. The other disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island also became nervous. Without any orders, they spontaneously surrounded her from all directions. They all knew that Bing Wuqing was a golden core expert. Under normal circumstances, ordinary disciples wouldn't dare to get too close to her. But this was the territory of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and Lu Pingon and a group of even more powerful high-level golden core cultivators were here. Of course, they had nothing to be afraid of. After all, if a fight really broke out, they wouldn't have to do anything. At most, they would just support her. After the fight, they could brag to others that they had fought Bing Wuqing. That would be a good topic of conversation. "I don't want to fight." Even though Bing Wuqing said so, her hands didn't move at all. However, the materialized merciless ice force had already seeped out of her body in an instant. The group of golden core experts, including Lu Pingon, didn't even have time to react before a thin layer of ice covered their bodies. As for the ordinary disciples on the periphery, they weren't affected. If such a strong, ruthless ice momentum was used on them, a large number of them would die today. That would be a massacre and there would be no room for redemption. Even so, it was enough to frighten everyone present. They didn't dare to act rashly anymore. Especially the high-level golden core cultivators led by Lu Pingon. Although the ice only covered the surface of their bodies, it wasn't as serious as it was against Xue Jianfeng. However, their strength could not compare to Xue Jianfeng, a golden core perfection expert. The strongest among them was Lu Pingon. The strongest among them, Lu Pingon, was only at the peak of the late golden core stage. Being covered by the ice, everyone felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. The piercing coldness seemed to come from the depths of their souls, making them tremble in fear. Under such circumstances, they would be lucky if they didn't kneel down, let alone fight back. "What do you want to do?" Lu Pingon knew that he still wouldn't give up. Although he was as scared as the others, this was the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. Even if Bing Wuqing was really more powerful than them. He didn't believe that Bing Wuqing would dare to make a move here. She would be making an enemy of the entire Blue Cloud clan of the North Island, or even the entire North Island Alliance. Who would have the guts to do that? "I've said it just now. I want to see your Grand Supreme Elder," Bing Wuqing said impassively. "You think you can see him just like that?" Lu Pingon was so angry that he gritted his teeth. His current state was one of anger and humiliation. That's right, the other party's sudden move had indeed shocked him. He had initially thought that Bing Wuqing was just a junior in the early stage of the Golden Elixir realm. He had not expected her to be such an expert. He finally realized that he had underestimated his enemy. But so what if he underestimated the enemy? Did he really think that he would be able to see the Grand Elder just by showing off a bit of his strength? What did this guy think the North Island Blue Cloud sect was? Did he really think that this was a place where he could behave atrociously? Bing Wuqing glanced at him and said a few words, which was rare for her. People are generally divided into two types. Some people have foresight and some people only realize it after a while. But I found out that you're the third type. What do you mean? Lu Pingon was stunned. I didn't realize it, Bing Wuqing said impassively. Lu Pingon was speechless for a long time. They all said that Bing Wuqing was a heartless person. Why was she so vicious today? Lu Pingon was about to retort when an inexplicable and powerful aura suddenly spread out from Bing Wuqing. Everyone's expression changed at the same time. They were even more frightened than when they were frozen by the merciless ice momentum. This aura. She was clearly a nascent soul realm old monster. Lu Pingon almost peed his pants. The expression on his face was brilliant. He would never have thought that Bing Wuching, a young junior, was already a nascent soul realm old monster at the top. You're really Bing Wuching? Lu Pingon asked a stupid question subconsciously. Of course, the other party was Bing Wuching. Even if she didn't say her name, they could still recognize her. After all, she was the leader of the younger generation back then. The higher-ups of the primeval sects would more or less pay attention to her. However, Lu Pingon couldn't believe the fact that Bing Wuching had become a nascent soul realm old monster. After all, it was too shocking. Bing Wuching ignored him and said directly, "Do I have the right to see your highest elder now?" Everyone looked at each other, then turned their heads stiffly to look at Lu Pingon. When they were frozen just now, they thought that they could still fight with the other party with the advantage of numbers and home advantage. But now that they found out that the other party was actually a nascent soul realm old monster, this absurd idea was immediately thrown out of Java. Against a nascent soul realm old monster, it would be difficult to win even if there were another 40 of them, let alone the 4 Golden Core experts present. With the intrinsic difference between the Golden Core and nascent soul realm, it was not something that could be made up for with numbers alone. There was only one way to deal with a nascent soul realm old monster, and that was to let the nascent soul realm old monster of their own sect fight in person. It was also because of this that the status of nascent soul realm old monsters in the primeval underworld was so high that it directly became a key indicator of a sect's status. There was nothing that could be done about it. An archaic sect with a nascent soul old monster as its overseer was indeed stronger than one without one. If they really fought, a nascent soul old monster was enough to annihilate any ordinary sect. These ordinary sects didn't have any means to fight back, so what could they do? "I didn't expect your excellency to already be the highest elder of the Snow Sword sect. We've been disrespectful." Lu Pingon's expression was extremely ugly, but he had no choice but to force a smile. He smiled apologetically and said, "The highest elder is the highest representative of a sect. Since it's a matter of the highest elder, it's also a matter of the entire sect. Please wait in the guest hall, I'll go and report to my highest elder right now." After saying that, Lu Pingon did not dare to delay any further. He gestured to the other Golden Core experts to entertain Bing Wuching, while he hurried to the top of the mountain. Chapter 53-57. These days they had been in a stalemate. Lu Pingon was in charge of the negotiation. Seeing that Qin Dongqing's breath was getting weaker day by day, Lu Pingon became more and more anxious. It could be said that he was looking forward to this personal disciple who could take on a big responsibility to bring him good news as soon as possible. Unfortunately, this time his hope was obviously going to fail again. Reporting to Master, not yet. Lu Pingon was a little embarrassed. Not only did Qinjiu have high hopes for him, but he was also ready to show his skills these days. After all, his direct opponent was Enchanting, who was almost the most unattractive person among all the high-level gold core stage cultivators in the Green Cloud sect in the North Island. Whether in terms of strength, status, or shrewdness, Lu Pingon believed that he could at least leave the other party behind by 10 streets. However, he did not expect that such a sloppy and ordinary good guy would suddenly become an impervious old fox after sitting at the negotiating table. No matter what strategy he used, it would always be kicked back to his feet in the end. That was not all. The key was that Enchanting did not just kick the ball around. Every time he was reasonable and eloquent, which made Lu Pingon unable to find any room to refute. Every time he could only sigh. "Enchanting, you can't judge a book by its cover. You're too slow." Qinjiu's eyes were somewhat unfathomable. Although it was said that there was no need to be suspicious of a person, and the other party was also his most successful pro-disciple, so there was nothing to be suspicious about. However, he was naturally suspicious, and after a long time, it was inevitable that he would have doubts. Moreover, from Lu Pingon's standpoint, there was indeed a motive in this regard. After all, if Qin Dongqing was really exhausted to death, Lu Pingon was likely to be the biggest beneficiary. "Yes, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I will speed up the negotiation and buy time for Deputy Leader Qin." Lu Pingon was frightened by this sentence and quickly showed his loyalty. "Tell me what's wrong?" Qinjiu glanced at him. At this time, although Lu Pingon was not seriously injured, he was unprecedentedly embarrassed. Looking at the whole Green Cloud sect in the North Island, there were very few people who could threaten him, an expert at the peak of the late gold core stage unless Lin Yi took action himself. Yes, Bing Wuqing from the Snow Sword sect came to visit and asked to see Lin Yi. After I refused, she changed her request. She wants to see you, master. Lu Pingon said respectfully. Bing Wuqing. Hearing this, Qinjiu thought for a moment and vaguely had an impression of it. He casually said, "Isn't it just a young boy who just entered the gold core stage? Just send him away. Do you need to report such a trivial matter?" That's what I thought in the beginning. But that won't do. He's a newly advanced original infant stage expert. I can't chase him away. Lu Pingon could only smile bitterly. What? Original soul stage? Even Qinjiu couldn't help but be shocked when he heard this. The birth of any new nascent soul old monster was a big event that could shake the entire immemorial martial arts world. Due to the great difficulty of breaking through to the nascent soul realm, it was impossible to achieve it without a few years' time. Normally they would have received news of it in advance. How could this fellow succeed without a word? Moreover, Bing Wuqing was so young. Could it be a smokescreen? Seeing Qinjiu's doubts, Lu Ping hurriedly said, "It's true, this disciple and a few other elders have personally felt his aura. He is indeed a nascent soul expert, there is no doubt about this." "Lead the way," Qinjiu said solemnly. There was no way Lu Ping would lie to him about something like this. Since he had confirmed that the other party was a nascent soul old monster, he had to make a personal appearance. Otherwise, Lu Ping wouldn't be able to handle it alone. He wasn't qualified. Very soon, Qinjiu appeared in front of Bing Wuqing. He stepped forward and chuckled. "Everyone says that Bing Wuqing of the Snow Sword faction is a super genius that no one has ever seen before and will ever see again. I didn't quite believe it in the past, but today I have no choice but to believe it. If I remember correctly, my young friend, Wuqing, is probably the youngest nascent soul expert in the history of the immemorial martial arts world. Congratulations. You flatter me. I'm not the youngest. The legendary figure of your faction who is known as the Great Emperor should be younger than me, right?" Bing Wuqing asked seriously. Qinjiu's smile immediately became a little awkward. He had said those words of praise just to warm up a little. Who knew that the other party would be so unreasonable as to directly refute him to his face? She was indeed young. "I'd like to pay a visit to the immemorial martial granduncle Lin Yi of your faction. Just now he said that he needed you, the Grand Supreme Elder, to personally make a decision. I wonder if you can fulfill this small request of mine?" Bing Wuqing went straight to the point. This. On the surface he pretended to be hesitant, but in fact, Qinjiu couldn't help but start cursing in his heart. Bing Wuqing was a hothead who didn't know the rules at all. Not only did she completely ignore the established rules of visiting, but even her tone was so stiff. How did this person suddenly become a nascent soul expert? However, cursing aside, Qinjiu couldn't show it on his face. After all, the other party was an out-and-out nascent soul expert. Compared to her, even if he was a little stronger, he didn't dare to directly fall out with her. What if both of them were injured? Moreover, even if he could kill Bing Wuqing on the spot, he would definitely be severely injured. But don't forget, other than Bing Wuqing, there was another veteran nascent soul old monster in the Snow Sword faction. If he came looking for revenge, how was he going to deal with them? In the small immemorial underworld, every nascent soul old monster was equivalent to a nuclear weapon in the secular world. They definitely couldn't be attacked easily. Otherwise, a careless move could lead to a world war that wouldn't end until one side was wiped out. For every sect involved, that would be an unbearable disaster. "You're the Grand Supreme Elder. Are you going to say that you don't have this authority?" Bing Wuqing asked with a frown. "Ah, my young friend, you must be joking. Of course I have this authority. However, it just so happens that Lin Yi is in seclusion at the Ascending Heaven Cliff right now. Even I can't rashly interrupt him. Otherwise, there might be unimaginable consequences. In my opinion, if my young friend really wants to see the immemorial martial granduncle, why don't you wait a little longer?" Qinjiu tried to beat around the bush. "Wait." Bing Wuqing raised her eyebrows. "That's right. My young friend, you've never been to the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island. During this period of time, you can travel around and experience the local customs of the North Island. When the immemorial martial granduncle comes out of seclusion, I'll send someone to inform you immediately. What do you think, my young friend?" Qinjiu suggested. Chapter 53-58. Broadcast. Follow Chidian reading and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't snatched red packets since the new year can now show their skills. In the eyes of an extremely pragmatic person like him, there was no such thing as sentimentality. He only cared about the pros and cons. As long as the pros outweighed the cons, he would act without hesitation. The reason why he didn't take any action now was because he hadn't figured out the situation yet, so he couldn't act rashly. After much persuasion, Bing Wuqing was finally persuaded to leave. Of course, she didn't really leave but was just temporarily stabilized. Qin Jiao even specifically asked Lu Pingon to arrange an extremely secluded residence for her, afraid that she would do something out of control if she interacted with the ordinary disciples. After all, the destructive power of an original infant stage expert was not to be underestimated. Keep a close eye on him. If he does anything, report to me immediately. Qin Jiao exhorted. Initially Lin Yi was his greatest threat, but now it had become Bing Wuqing. After all, the latter was a true nascent soul expert and she was an existence that could truly threaten him. How do I keep a close eye on him? Lu Pingon's face was bitter. It would be fine if she was a golden core stage expert, but she was an original infant stage expert who could easily flatten him with one hand. How could he keep a close eye on her? You don't have to keep an eye on his every move. Just make sure that the other disciples of our sect don't come into contact with him, especially not let him get close to Sky Cliff. Qin Jiao also knew that this request was a little too much, but it had to be done. He didn't know what the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi was, but neither of them was easy to deal with. If they really joined forces, even Qin Jiao would have a headache. Yes. Lu Pingon could only reluctantly agree. It was not very realistic for him to keep a close eye on Bing Wuqing with his strength, but he could change his way of thinking and keep an eye on those suspicious people who might get close to Bing Wuqing, such as Exanijia. Little did he know that when he and Qin Jiao were delaying, Bing Wuqing, Exanijia, who got wind of the news, had already gone to Sky Cliff and told Lin Yi about Bing Wuqing's visit in full detail. Hee, not bad. Lin Yi smiled faintly after listening. Although Bing Wuqing's quick advancement to the nascent soul realm was somewhat unexpected, he did not find it strange. After all, he was the one who had given her the supreme-grade golden elixir of condensing nascent soul realm. What he meant by not bad was actually the attitude that Bing Wuqing had displayed during this trip. She was showing her loyalty. Condensing the nascent soul so quickly is only not bad. Exanijia was dumbfounded. In the whole Green Cloud sect of the North Island, apart from Lin Yi, he was probably the one who knew Bing Wuqing the best. A year ago she was at the early stage of Gold Core just like him. But in the blink of an eye, she had become a Yuanying realm old weirdo. How could he bear this? I mean, his attitude is not bad. Lin Yi explained. Even though he had long known that Bing Wuqing was someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances, this fellow had not become arrogant at all after she had formed her nascent soul. She was actually so obedient, which was really rare. It was obvious that all those elixirs had not been wasted. He's one of us? Exanijia's eyes widened when he heard this. He had been wondering why Bing Wuqing had to come to see Lin Yi, but now he suddenly understood. He looked at Lin Yi with even more awe. He could even tame a genius like Bing Wuqing. Granduncle was really unfathomable. That's right. Lin Yi nodded. Since Bing Wuqing had come to the North Island, there was no need to hide this kind of thing anymore. It was more meaningful to announce it openly. With such a powerful follower, not only could it greatly deter the enemies, but it could also improve their self-confidence and cohesion at the same time. It was killing two birds with one stone. Granduncle is mighty. As expected, Exanijia was very excited and sincerely admired Lin Yi. He felt lucky that he had bet on the right person. Since Lin Yi could even tame a Yuanying realm expert like Bing Wuqing, it would be a piece of cake for him to deal with Qin Jiao, who was also a Yuanying realm old weirdo. He wouldn't have to be so worried in the future. Lin Yi looked indifferent. At his level, it would be too degrading for him to be excited about such a small thing. Granduncle, what should we do next? Should I contact Bing Wuqing? Exanijia asked in high spirits. Do you think you can contact her? Lin Yi glanced at him. It seems a little difficult. Exanijia felt like a bucket of cold water was poured over his head. He could easily figure out that Lu Pingon would do everything possible to prevent him from getting in touch with Bing Wuqing. Moreover, he wasn't strong enough to force his way in. It was easy to talk about contacting Bing Wuching, but it was very difficult to actually do it. It's not urgent. Don't be impatient. Linny smiled. Although they had been in a stalemate during this period of time, strictly speaking, they had always been the ones who had the upper hand. Now that Bing Wuching was here, it was even more so. Qinjiao should be the one anxious now, not him, so there was no need to panic at all. They could just wait and see. All right. Enchanting was a little resentful. It was rare to have someone as powerful as Bing Wuching here. He thought it was just the right time to wrestle with Qinjiao. For a native of the small Jianghu world like him, the deterrence of a nascent soul old monster was deep-rooted. Even though he had the upper hand in the situation before, he always felt frightened, and always felt that his side wasn't strong enough. Now that he finally had a nascent soul stage expert who was on par with him, his mood was completely different from before. Seeing this, Linny couldn't help but laugh. He didn't expect that Enchanting, who had always been a good guy who only knew how to protect himself, would have a belligerent side. It was really unexpected. But then again, although the situation forced him to stand on the opposite side of Qinjiao, Linny actually didn't want to make a big fuss. After all, his relationship with the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was not fake. It would be best if it could be resolved peacefully. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Bing Wuching had stayed in the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island for a few days. Because of Lu Pinggan's deliberate arrangement, she rarely interacted with the ordinary disciples of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, and had no chance to directly contact Enchanting. But with her strength, if she really wanted to do something, Lu Pinggan couldn't stop her at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she didn't want to fall out with Qinjiao for the time being, Bing Wuching would have already broken into climbing Heaven Cliff. Even if she chose not to move for the time being, it wasn't difficult for him to find out some news. After a few days, he had a general understanding of Lin Yi's situation. Judging from the current situation, although Lin Yi was trapped in climbing Heaven Cliff, he still had the upper hand in this confrontation with highest elder Qinjiao. At least Qinjiao didn't dare to do anything to him. However, Lin Yi also couldn't get out of the reaching heaven matrix. This was probably Qinjiao's only chance to win. Chapter 53-59. Broadcast. Follow Qidian Reading and get the first-hand news of the 515 red packets. Students who haven't grabbed red packets since the new year can now show their skills. This result made Bing Wuching feel a little more at ease. She had come all the way here in high spirits to show her loyalty to Lin Yi. If Lin Yi were to be killed by Qinjiao, that old man with his home advantage, that would be the end of her. However, although Lin Yi had the upper hand, it was not a solution to keep this stalemate. Bing Wuching had already specially inquired about the one-step to heaven matrix, and she knew that this matrix was extremely mysterious, and even a nascent soul realm old monster might not be able to break out of it. Although Lin Yi was unfathomable and no one could figure out his background, there was one thing that was certain. At least for now, this primordial spirit of his was far from the level of the nascent soul realm, and breaking out of the matrix would be as difficult as ascending to heaven. And if he didn't have the confidence to break the formation, this little initiative was just fleeting. Since he came to the Green Cloud sect in the North Island to show his loyalty, Bing Wuching couldn't just wait and do nothing. If he didn't even get to see Lin Yi in the end, his trip would be in vain. Breaking into the Heaven Cliff by force was the worst option. Bing Wuching didn't consider looking for Enchanting, because she didn't know if he was on Lin Yi's side. There was only one thing she could do, and that was to look for Qinjiao. As an expert of the nascent soul stage, it wasn't difficult for Bing Wuching to see Qinjiao. If Lu Pinggan dared to refuse, he could force Qinjiao to show up with a simple threat. In fact, Lu Pinggan didn't even need to be forced, because he had already asked Qinjiao to come out. After all, he wasn't a fool. After his personal experience last time, Lu Pinggan knew very well that he had no room to bargain with Bing Wuching, because they weren't at the same level. No matter what she asked, he just had to do it obediently and Qinjiao would deal with it. Otherwise, if he really made a decision and annoyed Bing Wuching, even Qinjiao might not be able to protect him. After staying in my North Island Blue Cloud sect for a few days, are you used to it, Wuching? Qinjiao greeted him with a smile. It doesn't matter if I'm used to it or not. I'm here to meet your primordial grandmaster, not to sightsee. Bing Wuching didn't give them any face as usual. Hee little friend Wuching, you really have a true temperament. You're still so straightforward with your words. Chinjiu laughed awkwardly. Nascent soul realm old monsters were the highest existences in the immemorial martial world, and there was a set of established rules and regulations when interacting with each other. Unfortunately, these things did not work on Bing Wuqing at all. To put it bluntly, the other party did not even know the rules in this regard, so what could one say about her? I'm not good with words, please forgive me, Elder Qin. But there's something I'd like to ask again. When can I go to Heaven Ascending Cliff? Bing Wuqing asked again. Didn't I say it last time? It depends on when Grand Master Lin Yi comes out of seclusion. I don't know the exact relationship between little friend Wuqing and him, but he's the Grand Master of my primordial Blue Cloud sect after all, so I definitely have to think for his sake. I hope little friend Wuqing can forgive me for this. Qin Jiu put on a show of being considerate for Lin Yi. Is that so? But why did I hear the disciples of your North Island Blue Cloud sect talking in private, saying that Elder Qin and your Grand Master Lin Yi don't seem to be on good terms? Even your Qin family's most valued deputy sect leader Qin Dongqing was beaten up by Lin Yi. Am I right? Bing Wuqing exposed him mercilessly. What? There's such a thing? Qin Jiu pretended to be confused and glared at Lu Pingon, who was beside him. Previously, he thought that this personal disciple of his was quite capable and could take on great responsibilities, but in the end he couldn't even do such a small thing. He was also a good-for-nothing. Lu Pingon smiled bitterly. These days he had been trying to think of ways to prevent the disciples of his sect from having contact with Bing Wuqing, but he couldn't stop the disciples from talking in private. The disciples of the Qin family's sect were fine, but the numerous local sects wouldn't be so obedient. With Bing Wuqing's ability, as long as someone talked about her, she would naturally know. This matter couldn't be blamed on him at all. But since Qin Jiu was glaring at him, Lu Pingon could only continue. He also pretended to be confused and said, "It can't be, right? Although Grand Supreme Elder and Grand Master haven't officially met, that's because Grand Master has been busy with seclusion ever since he arrived. They haven't even seen each other, so how could there be any conflict? Then what's the matter with Deputy Sect Leader Qin?" Bing Wuqing looked at the two's expressions. "Oh, Deputy Sect Leader Qin isn't here at the moment. He's out on official business, so those discussions you've heard should be nonsense. Those disciples often talk nonsense in private. Please don't laugh at them." Lu Pingon tried to fool him. Bing Wuqing looked straight into his eyes, and Lu Pingon didn't dare to meet her eyes at all. Slowly she said, "You're lying." Huh. Lu Pingon was taken aback, but he quickly forced a smile and said, "Elder Bing, you must be joking. Everything I've said is absolutely true and I'm not hiding anything." Bing Wuqing didn't say anything. She was very sure that the other party was lying. However, since the other party refused to admit it, there was no way she could expose him face to face, unless she could find a witness to confront him or find Qin Dongqing. Unfortunately, neither of these two options were realistic. Looks like everything is clear now. It's just some disciples gossiping. You don't have to take it too seriously, my young friend Wuqing. If there's any news about Grand Master Lin Yi, we'll definitely inform you immediately. Please don't be impatient, Qin Jiu finally stepped forward and said. At this point, Bing Wuqing naturally couldn't say anything more. She immediately turned and left. After Bing Wuqing left for a long time, Lu Pingon finally breathed a sigh of relief. He said worriedly, "Master, this Bing Wuqing isn't easy to fool. I'm worried that he'll stir up more trouble. The key is that he's in the nascent soul stage. I can't stop him even if I want to. What if he really does something out of line?" "What do you mean?" "Tell everyone to shut up. If anyone dares to gossip again, tell him to come and see me," Qin Jiu snorted coldly. "But what about Exanijia?" Theoretically, no one in the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, from the top management of the Golden Core stage to the ordinary disciples, whether they were from the Qin family's faction or the local faction, dared to disobey the order personally from Qin Jiu, but Exanijia was an anomaly. This guy was obviously on Lin Yi's side. They were bound together for good or bad. How could he be frightened by Qin Jiu's order? Humph, if he doesn't listen, you'll keep an eye on him. Qin Jiu's eyes turned sharp. If it weren't for the fact that Qin Dongqing was caught, and if it weren't for the fact that he was afraid that Qin Dongqing wouldn't be able to be saved after falling out with Lin Yi, he would have asked someone to get rid of this reckless Exanijia long ago. Chapter 5360. Latest news. Tomorrow is 515 Chidian's anniversary celebration, the day with the most benefits. Apart from the gift bags and school bags, the 515 red packets must be searched. There's no reason not to snatch them. Set the alarm clock, yes. Lu Pinggan's heart skipped a beat. He thought that he had disappointed Qinjiu again and again. If he couldn't even handle such a small matter, there would be nothing left to say. However, it turned out that stopping Xianijia from getting close to Bing Wuqing was not a small matter, especially not a small matter. To be precise, it was not difficult to stop Xianijia from getting close to Bing Wuqing, but the key was what if Bing Wuqing took the initiative to look for Xianijia? Bing Wuqing hadn't thought of this before, but after hearing the rumors, even an outsider could see that Xianijia was on Lin Yi's side. In this situation, if she wanted to get in touch with Lin Yi, the best way was to go through Xianijia other than to force her way through climbing Heaven Cliff. Lu Pinggan couldn't stop them at all. He didn't dare to and couldn't stop them. He could only watch Bing Wuqing and Xianijia talk, unable to do anything. After hearing the news, Qinjiu, the Grand Supreme Elder, finally couldn't sit still anymore. He frowned and said, "What's the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi?" Just to see Lin Yi, she flew thousands of miles from Middle Island to North Island. She couldn't get rid of him no matter how many times she tried, and now she won't leave. Is there an end to this? Both he and Lu Pinggan had probed the relationship between Bing Wuqing and Lin Yi during their previous 2 meetings. Unfortunately, Bing Wuqing's mouth was tight and she didn't reveal anything. "Master, we can't go on like this. It's too dangerous to let such an unstable factor stay here. We have to find a reason to persuade her to leave as soon as possible," Lu Pinggan said with a bitter face. Facing a nascent soul cultivator like Bing Wuqing, he really didn't know what to do. He was completely led by the nose and something would happen sooner or later. "Do you think you can get rid of such a plague just because you want to?" How could Qinjiu not want to get rid of Bing Wuqing as soon as possible? But with Bing Wuqing's attitude, if he was not allowed to see Lin Yi, how could he possibly leave? He won't stop until he reaches his goal. If he doesn't see Lin Yi, it's unrealistic to let him leave just like that. "Master, why don't we just let him go to Ascending Heaven Cliff?" Lu Pinggan suggested. "Humph, you are too naive. Do you think he will leave obediently after seeing Lin Yi? With the current situation, if he really has a good relationship with Lin Yi, wouldn't he stay to help Lin Yi and make us have one more powerful enemy?" Qinjiu scoffed at this suggestion. Release Bing Wuqing to see Lin Yi? Unless he was out of his mind, he wouldn't do something so stupid. If that happened, there would only be one outcome. It would definitely not be Bing Wuqing retreating obediently, but Lin Yi would be like a tiger that had grown wings. One Lin Yi was enough to render him helpless. If Bing Wuqing, who was in the nascent soul stage, was added to the mix, how could he handle it? "Master, actually, I don't think it's impossible," Lu Pinggan said meaningfully. Qinjiu frowned. But seeing that his expression was firm, he motioned for him to continue. "Master, putting Bing Wuqing aside, our negotiation with Lin Yi has already reached a stalemate. Deputy Sect Leader Chen's health condition is deteriorating day by day. We really can't drag this on any longer. We need to find a way to break out of this stalemate as soon as possible, and this Bing Wuqing just happens to be a good way to break out of this stalemate," Lu Pinggan said. "Be more specific." Qinjiu's interest was immediately piqued. "Yes, since it's a negotiation, there will always be concessions and compromises. I think we can make a concession and let Bing Wuqing see Lin Yi, but on the condition that Lin Yi can cure Deputy Sect Leader Chen," Lu Pinggan said. "Do you think Lin Yi will agree?" Qinjiu said thoughtfully. "It depends on what he has in mind. Everyone knows that you're the stabilizing force of our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Without your approval, no one can gain a foothold here. So if Lin Yi wants to gain a foothold in our Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, he'll have to reach a compromise with you in the end. In that case, as long as he's given a suitable way out, he'll definitely choose to concede," Lu Pinggan analyzed. "But what if he has other intentions?" Qinjiu frowned. "Since there's nothing left to say, then there's nothing more to say. No matter what, we can at least sound out the other party's attitude. In order to break out of this stalemate, we have to make the first move. What do you think, Master?" Lu Pinggan suggested carefully. They were already in a passive position, and now with the addition of Bing Wuqing, there was nothing more to say. Since they had no choice but to make the first move, they might as well be straightforward and sound out the other party's stance. Qinjiu pondered for a moment, Given Qin Dongqing's current state, it was indeed inappropriate to delay any further. In the end he could only nod and say, "Then let's do it this way. You go and talk to them, but you have to remember that our purpose is not just to sound them out. The most important thing is to find a way to get Bing Wuqing away as soon as possible. As long as she's gone, everything else is our internal problem. We can talk about it however we want, and it's not impossible for me to meet Lin Yi in person." In other words, as long as they manage to get rid of Bing Wuqing, a huge external threat, then Lin Yi would not be able to escape from his palm no matter how capable he was in the face of a supreme elder in the nascent soul realm. Understood. Lu Pingon immediately responded and left. Faced with Lu Pingon's concession this time, Xin Yijie was somewhat surprised and shocked. But after thinking about it, it made sense. After all, Bing Wuqing, a master in the nascent soul realm, had come all the way here to help. If Qin Jiao continued to insist, they would be the ones to suffer in the end. This time, of course, Xin Yijie would not evade it like before. Instead, he brought Lu Pingon to Lin Yi and asked him to talk to Lin Yi face to face. "Supreme Elder wants me to cure Qin Dongqing?" After listening to Lu Pingon's words, Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. "Yes, you also know that sect leader Hong is not here now, and now deputy sect leader Qin is like this. There is no one in the entire Green Cloud sect who can take charge of the affairs, big or small. No matter what kind of differences there are between you and Supreme Elder, at the end of the day, you still have to think for the Green Cloud sect of the North Island, right? Such a big sect can't possibly have no one who can properly receive the guests from the outer gate, right?" Lu Pingon said earnestly. "What's the condition?" Lin Yi asked casually. "Supreme Elder said that as long as you can cure Deputy Sect Leader Qin, he can choose to take a step back and let Bing Wuqing come here to see you," Lu Pingon said with a smile. "That's it." Lin Yi glanced at him with a faint smile. Of course, the condition that Lu Pingon got from Qinjie was not just this. Chapter 5361. Latest news. Tomorrow was 515 Qidian's anniversary celebration, the day with the most benefits. Apart from the gift bags and school bags, this time's 515 red packets were definitely worth watching. There was no reason not to snatch the red packets. Set the alarm clock. If it was just to let Bing Wuqing come up, from Lin Yi's point of view, it was not attractive at all. However, this was a negotiation and he could not show his bottom line right away. That would be too stupid. If this is the only condition and you don't even have the least bit of sincerity, then there's no need to talk anymore. "Elder Lu, please go back." Xin Yijie stood at the side and chimed in. "Don't be anxious. Before I came here, the Grand Supreme Elder said that after Bing Wuqing is sent away, he will personally appear and talk to you. When that time comes, he will definitely give you a satisfactory answer. What do you think?" Lu Pingon quickly added. To Lin Yi, it was more advantageous for Qinjiao to appear personally than for Bing Wuqing to come up the mountain to meet him. This was because it was the only way he could prove his identity as the immemorial Grand Uncle Master, unless Qinjiao turned against him. Of course, Lin Yi did not think too much of this. This was just Qinjiao and Lu Pingon's one-sided wishful thinking. "There's no proof," Lin Yi said lightly. "Could it be that Grand Supreme Elder wants to make a written contract for you, Grand Supreme Elder?" Lu Pingon frowned. "Haha, rather than believe in a written contract, I'd rather believe in a ghost. How about this? Let Bing Wuqing come up to see me first and we can talk about other things later." Lin Yi decided. "This." Lu Pingon hesitated, then nodded and agreed. "Okay, to show our sincerity, we'll take a step back first, but we'll wait for Grand Supreme Elder's reply next." His meaning was clear. If Lin Yi sent Bing Wuqing away, then they could continue the next step of the negotiation. If not, then it would be equivalent to completely falling out and there would be nothing to talk about. "Fine." Lin Yi nodded. Even though he was trapped in the one-step-to-heaven formation and could not get out, he had no intention of leaving Bing Wuqing behind as a helper. Compared to this side, Lung Lung, who was left in the Snow Sword faction of the Middle Island, needed the protection of Bing Wuqing, a nascent soul expert, more. After all, there was still a huge hidden danger in the form of Shui Jianfeng. In addition, he had another consideration. He was afraid that Bing Wuqing would really fight with Qinjiao on impulse. Although she was an expert of the Yuanying realm, she had just broken through and her foundation was not stable. If that happened, it would not only mean that she would completely fall out with the Green Cloud clan of the North Island, But Bing Wuqing would definitely be the one who would suffer losses. There would be no benefits. Lu Pingon was very efficient and brought Bing Wuqing up in no time. Of course, Bing Wuqing did not have an identity token, so she could only stand outside the one-step to heaven matrix and talk to Lin Yi. Otherwise, he might not be able to get out after coming in. Boss Lin Yi, I'm relieved that you're fine. Bing Wuqing breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that Lin Yi was safe and sound. Even though she knew that Lin Yi would not be defeated so easily by Qinjiu, she was still worried that she could not see Lin Yi for a long time. Now she was finally relieved. Hee, what could happen to me? Lin Yi smiled. He noticed the way she addressed him. It was obvious that she had learned it from Wu Qintian and the others. It seemed that this arrogant immemorial prodigy had already recognized his own position. Their relationship was no longer one of mere coercion and exploitation. She had become his follower with sincerity. So what do you need me to do now? Help you break the matrix or deal with Qinjiu directly? Bing Wuqing did not have the habit of making small talk. Even if she wanted to express her loyalty, she was simple and direct. You don't need to do anything. Go back to the Snow Sword faction and look after Lung Lung for me. Just stay put for now, Lin Yi said. What about Shui Jianfeng? Bing Wuqing could not figure out what Lin Yi was thinking. Things were different now. When he came to the North Island, he had openly betrayed the center. Naturally, there was no need for him to continue feigning civility. If it was not for the fear of disrupting Lin Yi's plan, he would have killed Shui Jianfeng directly and not let him live. If he doesn't move, you don't move either. No matter what he and the center do, your priority is to ensure the safety of Lung Lung and yourself. You don't need to worry about anything else for now, Lin Yi instructed. Okay, I understand. Bing Wuqing understood. Even though Lin Yi did not reveal more, she had already understood what Lin Yi was thinking. If he didn't move for now, it meant that there would definitely be a big move with the center in the future. It was just that the time was not right yet. Oh right. It's rare for you to come to the North Island. I can't let you make a wasted trip. As Lin Yi spoke, he called Xenijia, who was waiting at the side, and gave him 2 elixirs to pass to Bing Wuqing. Thank you, big boss. Bing Wuqing's eyes lit up instantly. Strictly speaking, the Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixir was his main purpose for coming to the North Island this time. Even though it was a little too realistic and even despicable to say it out loud, it was undeniable that it was the truth. To put it nicely, a person like him was extremely rational, but to put it bluntly, he was actually a mercenary. He just wasn't as short-sighted as the others. Lin Yi was well aware of this, but he did not mind. Since he had become someone's boss, he had to have a corresponding vision and tolerance. As long as Bing Wuqing served him well, he would never choke her in the supply of elixirs. After all, as long as he could control her, the stronger Bing Wuqing was, the better it would be for him. Putting away the 2 Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixirs, Bing Wuqing did not express her gratitude verbally. Instead, she solemnly bowed to Lin Yi, turned around and left. Since Lin Yi had asked him to bide his time and take care of Lung Lung, then he would do it. Obviously, there was no need for him to meddle in the troubles of the North Island. From the beginning, he had predicted that a mere Qinjiu would not be a problem for Lin Yi. With 2 Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixirs, if everything went well, she could advance 2 levels in a short period of time and become a middle-stage Nascent Soul expert. Bing Wuqing was looking forward to her future even more. Bing Wuqing left swiftly. She didn't bid farewell to anyone when she descended from the ascending cliff. She rode on her snow eagle and disappeared into the horizon. All right, it's time to get down to business after dragging it out for so long. Lin Yi stretched himself. Until now, Xenijia was still in a daze. The 2 pills that he had just passed to Gu Lingji were too shocking. He was still in a state of shock until now. Those were the legendary Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixirs. Before this, he was still very sure that Lin Yi was the grandmaster of his sect. Even if he was not, he must have a close relationship with the North Island's Green Cloud sect. But now he was really doubting it. What kind of monster was he to give away the Supreme Grade Gathering Nascent Elixirs so casually and 2 at once? A small sect like the North Island's Green Cloud sect would not be able to accommodate such a big shot, right? You want the elixirs too? Lin Yi glanced at him. Xenijia did not know how to react at that moment. Chapter 5362. Wasn't that obvious? Who wouldn't want elixirs? Forget about the legendary elixirs like the Gathering Nascent elixir. He would be thankful to his ancestors for just one golden elixir. He had been stuck at the early stage of golden elixir all these years without making any progress. On the one hand, it was due to his innate aptitude, which was incomparable to a freak like Bing Wuqing, but on the other hand, he wasn't that bad. He was at least at the intermediate level, and the reason why he couldn't advance was because of the elixirs. What could he do if he couldn't get golden elixirs? Here. Lin Yi tossed a few golden elixirs to Exianijia. After a period of observation, Exianijia had gained Lin Yi's approval. Moreover, Exianijia was going to be entrusted with important tasks in the future. Therefore, it was reasonable to give him some elixirs to strengthen his strength. No matter what, the strength of an early-stage golden elixir was not enough. That. His dream came true without warning. Exianijia was at a loss for what to do. It took him a long time to catch the golden elixirs, and he said gratefully, "Thank you, Grand Master." "No need, you deserve it. You can go and call someone," Lin Yi said. "Call who?" Exianijia was stunned. Lu Pingon, of course. Now that Bing Wuqing has been sent away as they wished, it's almost time for a showdown. That Grand Elder's patience should be running out by now, right? Lin Yi said lightly. As a result, just as he finished speaking, there were people walking slowly towards climbing Heaven Cliff. One of them was Lu Pingon, who was carrying the unconscious Qin Dongqing on his back, and the old man walking in front of him was Grand Elder Qinjiu. Just as Lin Yi expected, this Grand Elder's patience had long run out. In fact, even without the unexpected interlude of Bing Wuqing, he was already prepared to have a showdown with Lin Yi. After all, Qin Dongqing's current condition was not optimistic. When a person's primordial spirit was drained, their body would naturally begin to wither and even slowly die. Even powerful cultivators were no exception to this. Compared to ordinary people, the only difference was that their bodies were stronger and could last a little longer. There was no essential difference between the two. No. Qin Dongqing was already on the brink of death. This unprecedented situation was something that even Qinjiu could do nothing about. Once Qin Dongqing's body died, everything would be over. Even if his primordial spirit was still alive, it would only be a lonely soul, destined not to last long. The point was, how could the Qin family of North Island hand over such a big responsibility to a lone ghost? Without any greetings or words, Qinjiu and Lu Pingon directly stepped into the one-step to heaven matrix. The intention of placing Qin Dongqing, whose breath was extremely weak, in front of Lin Yi was obvious. Although the Supreme Elder personally came, he didn't put on a big show this time. Apart from Lu Pingon, he didn't bring any other disciples. After all, from his point of view, the fewer people who knew about his meeting with Lin Yi, the better it would be for him. You should have a way to cure Dongqing, right? Qinjiu looked Lin Yi up and down. The two had been at each other's throats for a long time, but this was the first time they'd met face to face. Lin Yi's youthfulness was far beyond his expectations. At first glance, he was sure that this guy was definitely not the Archean martial granduncle, but a real young man. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. Then let's start the treatment, Qinjiu said directly. Oh, aren't you going to talk about the conditions with me? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, and Exianijia on the side also curled his lips. Even if the other party was the high and mighty Supreme Elder, after confronting for so long, he didn't have much power in his heart. He didn't even have the most basic conditions, and he directly asked someone to cure Qin Dongqing. Was he treating people like fools? What conditions do you want? Qinjiu looked at Lin Yi with an inscrutable expression. I don't need any conditions. Just give me my identity token. That's all, Lin Yi said with a faint smile. This answer was not surprising. With the identity token, it was equivalent to receiving official recognition, including from the Supreme Elder. Lin Yi was the legitimate Archean martial granduncle. No one could question it anymore, and it was a matter of course. More importantly, with the identity token, he could freely enter and exit the ascending heaven cliff. The one-step to heaven array would no longer be an obstacle that was difficult to overcome. For Lin Yi, this was the biggest benefit. If it was Lu Pingon at this time, he would definitely use the excuse of sect leader Hong Zijuan's absence. But now Qinjiu was standing here. If the dignified Supreme Elder had to use a mere sect leader as an excuse, no matter how reasonable it sounded, after all, he would still be at a disadvantage. If this spread out, he would be laughed at. If you cure Dongqing, I will give you the identity token. Qin Jiu's answer was straightforward. Although he had confirmed that Lin Yi was not the Archean martial granduncle, compared to Qin Dongqing's life, these were not important. Okay. Lin Yi's answer was also very straightforward. Previously, when Lu Pingon and Xian Yijie were their respective spokespersons, they were testing each other and wrangling with each other. After talking for so long, they still could not come to an agreement. Now that the two main characters personally came forward, the negotiation was a matter of a word. The process of treating Qin Dongqing was very simple. Qin Dongqing's primordial spirit, which was imprisoned in the space of the jade pendant, was released and returned to his physical body. However, the current Qin Dongqing's physical body was too weak. Even if his primordial spirit was intact, it could not easily recover in a short time. When the primordial spirit returned, the whole person was still in a half-dead state. The only difference from before was that there was a trace of indescribable temperament. Lu Pingon did not understand, but with Qin Jiu's eyesight, it was easy to see the difference between the two. Previously, Qin Dongqing was a piece of rotten wood that was constantly rotting and there was no cure for it. Now, although he still looked like a piece of rotten wood, there was a glimmer of vitality. Next, as long as he was nursed well, it would not take long for him to return to normal. Well, it's your turn to fulfill your promise, Supreme Elder. Lin Yi raised his eyebrows. That's right. Qin Jiu winked at Lu Pingon, signaling him to take the still unconscious Qin Dongqing away. After the two of them walked out of the range of the one-step to heaven array, Qin Jiu slowly said, "Before that, this old man hopes that you can answer my question honestly." Say it. Lin Yi's face did not show any abnormality. Chapter 53-63. Lin Yi looked at him calmly. After a while he grinned without any sincerity. "I've already told you he's your martial granduncle." Looks like I won't be able to hear the truth." Qin Jiu's expression changed and his aura became extremely sharp. For the first time he released the aura of a nascent soul cultivator without holding back. Xian Yijie was taken aback. Facing the opponent's imposing manner, it was extremely difficult for him, an expert in the early stage of Gold Core, to even stand there. If it wasn't for Lin Yi standing next to him, he might have knelt down on the spot. After all, the power and terror of a nascent soul old monster was deeply rooted in the ancient Jianghu. What? Is Grand Elder going to go back on his word? Lin Yi's expression was still the same. He was not moved by the other party's aura at all. In his eyes, the so-called Yuanying stage old monster's aura was actually just like that. There was really nothing to be surprised about. It's not that I'm going back on my word. It's just that as the old guy of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, I have to keep a close eye on this kind of thing. If I let some shady people in, I'll be criticized by others. Although Qin Jiu's tone was calm, his aura became more and more intense. It was obvious that he wasn't going to let this matter rest. To be precise, he didn't have this plan from the beginning. No matter whether Lin Yi, the primordial Uncle Master, was real or fake, he was destined to never let Lin Yi enter the Green Cloud sect of the North Island as he wished. After all, two tigers couldn't share one mountain. Apart from Qin Dongqing's concern, the other key reason why he didn't directly turn hostile for so long was that he didn't want to take risks before he figured out the strange means that Lin Yi had displayed before. Therefore, Qin Jiu had not been idle during this period of time. He had been searching for all sorts of information related to absorbing souls. Unfortunately, it was to no avail. This was not strange. Even if the primordial underworld had always focused on the cultivation of the primordial spirit, and there were all kinds of primordial spirit techniques, such as the soul reaping hand and the primordial spirit devouring technique, were unheard of. After all, the strongest among them was only a nascent soul old monster. This was the limit of his level. So what if he researched more? Without information, it meant that he had no confidence. That was why Qin Jiu had been patient. Until today, when his patience was completely exhausted. Of course, the unknown meant risks, but Qin Jiu didn't think that he would really fall into the hands of a mere Lin Yi. At most, it would be a little troublesome. He was a nascent soul cultivator. Naturally, he had the arrogance of a nascent soul cultivator. At the end of the day, it's still the same thing. Burning the bridge after crossing the river. As a Grand Elder, you change your attitude pretty quickly. Lin Yi didn't show any anger on his face. He didn't expect the other party to talk to him about honesty. If he really foolishly believed the other party's character, there was only one explanation. He was out of his mind. You can say whatever you want. Since you've chosen to challenge me, you should have been prepared for this. Isn't that right? Qinjiu did not feel the slightest bit embarrassed. At his level, his face had long been honed to the point of perfection, so what was this? No wonder you're a nascent soul cultivator. You look like you're going to eat me alive. Very scary. Lin Yi said with a faint smile. You're about to die, but you're still quite stubborn. Qinjiu replied with a cold snort. Listening to the conversation between these two people, Exanijia on the side was completely motionless. The two big shots were ready to do it themselves. What should a small fry like him do? Should he stay and help, or should he escape? In terms of helping, Exanijia knew that he couldn't help at all with his little strength. It would be good enough if he stayed and didn't help. But if he just ran away like this, not to mention that it would be hard to explain to Lin Yi, he was still a gold core stage elder after all. He was still a person who cared about his reputation. Glancing at Exanijia, who was hesitating next to him, Qinjiu suddenly said, I heard that you also brought a few disciples from the secular world with good qualifications. If you don't want to get involved, let them hide first. Don't worry, as long as they don't make trouble in the future, I won't take revenge. I still have this little bit of tolerance. This was the truth. Qinjiu went back on his words to Lin Yi because Lin Yi had his weakness. Whether it was status or strength, Lin Yi had the potential to threaten him. To a certain extent, he could be considered as someone who was qualified to be his opponent. Of course, he could do anything at this time. But Ling Shan and the others were different. Although they were all Lin Yi's people, for a nascent soul cultivator like Qinjiu, it would be too narrow-minded to even care about these people. Now, not only House Qin of the North Island, even the entire Jadian of the North Island was in a state of no successor. As long as he killed Lin Yi, Ling Shan and the others would be a group of dragons without a leader. They wouldn't be a threat at all. Instead, they were all good prospects. The price was just to spend some time to train them. No need. Lin Yi's answer was straight to the point. In fact, until now, Ling Shan and the others hadn't shown themselves. They were all in their own rooms practicing in isolation, not paying attention to the outside world. Qinjiu couldn't help but be surprised. His lips curled into a mocking smile. You're so cruel to your own men? I've really underestimated you. What a character. The sky-climbing cliff was not a big place, and the area covered by the one-step to sky-climbing formation was even smaller. Even if it was a fight between two ordinary gold core experts, it could easily sweep everything away. Now, if it was a nascent soul old monster like Qinjiu, he could easily destroy this place with just a wave of his hand. In other words, if these people, including Exanijia, stayed here, they would inevitably be implicated. With their strength, no one could leave this place alive. From Qinjiu's perspective, what Lin Yi did was equivalent to sentencing them to death. Cruel and merciless was absolutely appropriate. Cruel and merciless? Lin Yi smiled and looked at the nascent soul cultivator. I say, are you misunderstanding something, Grand Elder? Qinjiu paused. I never planned to fight with you. Even if we were to fight face to face, I would at most make you follow in Qin Dongqing's footsteps. There's no need to go through so much effort. Lin Yi said seriously. What? Even Qinjiu couldn't help but be stunned by his tone. It was true that he still couldn't understand the strange method the other party used on Qin Dongqing, but he was a nascent soul old monster. Did this brat think that the same method would be effective on a nascent soul old monster? He was too naive. Chapter 5364. Interesting. Very interesting. Qinjiu reacted and laughed. His powerful momentum suddenly became more and more wild and fierce. He laughed loudly and said, If you have the ability, then come and have a try. As he spoke, Qinjiu took a light step forward. However, before he finished his step, his whole body swayed inexplicably, and then he had already crossed a distance of tens of feet and appeared directly behind Lin Yi. The top body movement of the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island half-step jump. This was not the end. At this moment, Qinjiu's fingertip had already pointed at the back of Lin Yi's head. An extremely fierce energy chi instantly condensed into an invincible magic weapon and shot out. Instant kill. Exanijia, who was watching this scene from the side, suddenly had his heart in his throat. Half-step flip followed by instant kill. Such an attack was absolutely fast and lethal. In the face of an unknown opponent like Lin Yi, Qinjiu, a nascent soul realm old monster, did not underestimate his opponent at all. He was going all out as if the person standing in front of him was a Yuanying realm old monster from another sect, a strong enemy at the same level as him. Qinjiu's attack was indeed fast, but unfortunately his opponent was Lin Yi. Even if he did not use the extremely fast body movement, he could easily avoid his instant kill in the state of half-primordial spirit. As expected, Lin Yi just swayed slightly and easily avoided the instant kill. Your strength is really not weak. No wonder you are so arrogant. But you can avoid one, I wonder if you can avoid 10? Qinjiu appeared above Lin Yi's head condescendingly. At this moment, a powerful finger strength was shot out from each of his fingertips. It was the ultimate version of instant kill, 10 consecutive finger kill. 10 finger strengths interweaved into a dense killing net, completely covering Lin Yi, leaving him nowhere to hide. Hee, you are quite confident, aren't you? Lin Yi's voice then sounded above his head. How could it be? Qinjiu suddenly turned pale with fright. He had clearly locked the position of Lin Yi with his divine consciousness. No matter how fast the opponent was, it was impossible for him to escape unscathed. How could he suddenly appear above him? What the hell was this? It was only at this moment that the nascent soul stage old monster suddenly reacted. Although he looked no different from an ordinary person, he was still a primordial spirit. Qinjiu's reaction was fast. He wanted to get rid of it the moment he realized something was wrong. Unfortunately, he was still too slow. An invisible giant black hand had already enveloped his head. Qinjiu's eyes quickly became empty in a short period of time, and then became completely lifeless. He then collapsed to the ground and no longer moved. The situation was exactly the same as Qindongqing before. Exanijia was dumbfounded. He was speechless for a long time. From his point of view as a bystander, this pinnacle battle really came abruptly, but it ended even more abruptly. In his expectation, even if Lin Yi was really an extraordinary existence, in order to kill a Yuanying stage-old monster, he would at least have to go through a bitter battle. How could he kill him just like that? Was this still a powerful Yuanying stage-old monster? What are you waiting for? Drag him out. Lin Yi glanced at him and ordered. Drag him out? Exanijia pointed at Qinjiu on the ground with trepidation. Even if he was unconscious at the moment, he was still a superior Grand Elder. He was a Yuanying stage-old monster who stood at the top of the small Jianghu in the primitive times. Since when could such an existence receive such treatment? What else can I do? Stay here and get moldy? Lin Yi had a strange look on his face. He seemed to be pointing at something and said, "You know what to do next, right?" What to do? Exanijia was still at a loss. Everything that happened today was too sudden. He was not mentally prepared at all. Lin Yi did not tell him anything about how to deal with it. He did not even know what to do at this time. Grand Elder was killed and there is no news from the leader. Isn't it obvious what to do next? Of course, it's to take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. It's rare for there to be such a big power vacuum. Don't tell me you want someone else to take over the power vacuum? Lin Yi looked at him and said. Before he came to the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, he actually had no idea about the power inside the sect. The reason why he came to this point was that he was forced by the situation. If it were not for Qinjiu and Qindongqing, Lin Yi would not mind getting along with them peacefully. But now even Qinjiu the Grand Elder had become like this. If he still did not take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, it would be too hypocritical. No matter what. Since he planned to establish a foothold in the small Jianghu in the primitive times, the first thing was to smooth over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. Instead of letting others take over for Lin Yi, the best candidate to take over was naturally Exanijia. As for himself, of course he could not do it himself. He had to be a strong backer behind Exanijia. Otherwise, it would be a big trouble to appease the public opinion. After all, he was an outsider. Take over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island? Do you want me to do it? Exanijia was completely stunned when he heard this. He was just an elder who ranked at the bottom of the early stage of Gold Core. He had never thought that he could defeat Qinjiu the Grand Elder, nor had he thought about taking over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island. He did not even dare to think about it. Are you afraid that no one will obey you? Lin Yi saw through his doubts at a glance. Although Enchanting was a good person who put his own safety first, he could tell from the fact that he turned to Lin Yi without hesitation at the last moment that he was not a good-for-nothing. Deep down in his heart there was a huge ambition. Enchanting was speechless. Was there a need to ask this question? With his little strength, it was difficult for him to rope in a few allies. As for taking over the Blue Cloud sect in the North Island, was that even possible? What's there to hesitate about? Drag this guy out. Who dares to obey you? Lin Yi pouted and pointed at Qinjiao on the ground. That's right. Enchanting's eyes suddenly lit up. Of course he was not persuasive alone, but the Grand Elder on the ground was enough to convince everyone. The saying, "the strong are respected," was not just an empty saying. Now that even the old monster in the Gathering Vitality realm was killed, who in the sect dared to be disobedient? Needless to say, the local factions had all kinds of complaints in the open and in the dark, but they did not dare to show it because of Grand Elder Qinjiao's tyranny. If someone could stand up and take down Qinjiao, even if they did not raise both hands to agree, most of them would not oppose it. After all, this was different from the invasion of foreign enemies. It was an internal struggle of the sect, an internal affair. Chapter 5365. After all, the prestige of an old monster in the Yuaning realm was not just for show. They had the courage to go against Lin Yi before purely because they felt that he was just a swindler with no strength. To put it bluntly, the ignorant were fearless. In fact, after Qin Dongqing was beaten up, these people basically began to quiet down. The only one who really jumped up and down was Lu Pingon, and this was because he was negotiating for Qinjiao's endorsement. Otherwise, even Lu Pingon would not dare to be so active. After all, no one was a fool. Everyone knew that the bird that sticks out will be shot. Knowing that Lin Yi was not to be trifled with, who would dare to jump up and down? And now Lin Yi proved that he was not to be trifled with real means. The previous Qin Dongqing was just a small test and Qinjiao was the one he wanted to get rid of. The whole process was easy. Thinking of this, Enchanting could not help but be excited. Although taking over the Green Cloud sect of the North Island still felt a little unreal, with the support of a big tree like Lin Yi, it was not completely impossible. But can I really do it with my little strength? Enchanting was still not very confident. Now, with the example of the Grand Elder, the effect of killing the chicken to warn the monkey was absolutely great. As long as there was the strength of a middle-stage gold core realm, Enchanting believed that he could control the overall situation. But the problem was that the strength of an early-stage gold core realm was a little too weak. It's not enough, so I have to come out in person to control the situation. That's enough, Lin Yi said. You'll come out in person? Enchanting was shocked. Even Qinjiao was easily beaten half to death. If Lin Yi came out in person, the deterrent effect would be obvious. Not to mention the high-level gold core realm and ordinary disciples in the sect. Even another old monster in the Yuaning realm would have to think twice. But the problem was, could Lin Yi go out? Don't forget, this was still in the one step to heaven formation. Even if Qinjiao the Grand Elder was easily killed, it did not mean that Lin Yi could break out of the formation. This was completely different. The only way to break the one step to heaven formation was to achieve 4 words. One step to heaven. Yes, so you can go and gather people. I'll be right there. Lin Yi smiled confidently. Then, all right. Enchanting nodded heavily. Since Lin Yi had said so, he naturally had no reason to doubt it. He immediately dragged the unconscious Qinjiao out. He watched Enchanting leave. Lin Yi closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then he slowly stretched his hand forward until he touched the invisible barrier. The corners of his mouth curled up. One step to heaven array. After studying it for so long, I should be able to get out, right? During this period of time, Lin Yi's efforts were not limited to cultivating his spirit power and the soul-hooking hand. How to break through the one step to heaven matrix had always been one of the biggest problems in front of him. After all, he had never expected Qinjiao and the others to obediently hand over their identity tokens. Of course, it was okay if they really couldn't break through. Now that the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island was leaderless, it shouldn't be too difficult for Enchanting to find a way to get an identity token. However, it was rare to encounter such a mysterious formation. If he couldn't break through by himself but was forced to take the back door, would he still be Lin Yi? In theory, the only person who could really break through the one step to heaven matrix was the legendary figure of the Blue Cloud sect of the North Island, who was called the Great Emperor. After all, this was the formation he set up himself. Other than that, no one else had ever heard of it. According to Exanegia, even a Yuanying realm old monster like Qinjiu had never really broken through the one step to heaven matrix. He had never really broken through the one step to heaven matrix, and he rarely made such an attempt because that was the domain of legendary figures. But now Lin Yi was finally going to be the first person to try it. His fingertips touched the formation. In an instant, Lin Yi once again felt that mysterious feeling of being so close yet so far away. After this period of continuous fumbling, he wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling at all. In order to cross this barrier that was so close yet so far away, he'd thought of no less than 100 methods, but all of them had failed in the end. It wasn't entirely a problem of thinking. The main shackle was actually the strength itself. If one didn't have the strength beyond the Yuanying realm, it was impossible to break through the one step to heaven matrix. This was probably the original intention of the legendary Great Emperor when he set up the one step to heaven matrix. Originally, even if Lin Yi realized this, he would be helpless. However, because of the large amount of divine sense grassroot, regardless of the strength of the primordial spirit body, his primordial spirit was already a level higher than when he first came to the small ancient Jianghu. In terms of level alone, it had even recovered to the level of the original body on the Heaven Stage Island, a real mysterious ascension stage. If not, the power of his soul-hooking hand would not suddenly become so strong, and even a Yuanying realm old monster like Qinjiu could easily deal with it. For the small ancient Jianghu, which was used to the peak of the Yuanying realm, the current Lin Yi was undoubtedly a monster, a terrible monster who could easily pierce through the entire ceiling. With one step, Lin Yi instantly switched from the primordial spirit body to the primordial spirit form, and then quickly condensed into a very thin and long primordial spirit thread. If the onlookers had enough eyesight, they would find that this form was almost the same as when the primordial spirit projection was used. That's right, this was the countermeasure that Lin Yi came up with. Although the one step to heaven line was mysterious, but after all, it was not comparable to the real cross-realm projection. The difficulty of this did not lie in whether the primordial spirit projection could cross the one step to heaven line, but whether Lin Yi could successfully cast the imitation version of the primordial spirit projection. Even if it was just a simple imitation, even if the effect was only 1% or even 1,000th of the original, the difficulty of this was not trivial. One must know that the primordial spirit projection could only be successful by relying on a special formation, but now it was purely relying on Lin Yi himself. This level of difficulty was something that only Lin Yi himself could understand. One moment in reality, but to Lin Yi it felt like a long time had passed. The next moment, an almost undetectable primordial spirit thread appeared on the other side of the formation, and it grew at a speed visible to the naked eye, slowly condensing into Lin Yi's silhouette. One step to heaven achieved. "Boss, are we leaving?" Qintian's voice came from behind. Ling Shan and the others poked their heads out as well, all of them looking excited. While the battle between Lin Yi and Qinjiu didn't take much effort, and they didn't make much noise, it would be a lie to say that they didn't notice anything at all. They were training in isolation on the surface, but they were actually eavesdropping. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.